Chapter 1356. The Beast God Temple. The huge ancient pagoda was moving at an extremely slow speed from a huge formation. More than 10 elders of the Beast God Temple followed closely behind. However, they were all discussing the Beast God Temple. Although they were currently summoning the Beast God Temple with all their might, they would still have to take some time out to solve any problems they encountered. Forget Chuan, Guhi, the heaven demons that you two are in charge of seems to have suffered a lot of losses recently. Go and bring back this young man called Li Zongjio. Don't kill him. After a round of discussion among the elders, someone finally spoke. His body was facing the front, but his voice was directly behind him, stretching out continuously. The void began to distort. Then, two burly figures appeared behind the elder. They first performed a solemn salute to the Beast God Temple in the sacred land, then bowed to the elder in response. Yes, sir. These two were the highest leaders of the heaven demons. Forget Chuan's true form was a 10,000-year-old flood dragon, with a vicious and dark personality. Meanwhile, Guhi was a 10,000-year-old river god. The so-called river god was just a title. If he revealed his true form, he would look more like a snapping turtle. Moreover, he had the power to overturn rivers and seas. The heaven demons division. Forget Chuan was the leader, and Guhi was the deputy. In fact, the two of them had not led the heaven demons for a long time. They were both extremely powerful existences. Now the sacred martial realm situation was set. The remaining humans were also struggling at death's door. They did not dare to make any moves. Under such a stable situation, the two of them could be said to have gone into seclusion to cultivate. Who would have thought that in such a short period of time, an unknown young man would appear and cause great damage to the Beast God Hall? Not only that, but the Beast God Temple's fallen army had also suffered heavy losses. Many of the territories that they had conquered in the past had been directly taken back. All of this was because of this Li Zongjio. Forget Chuan and Guhi originally thought that an enemy of this level did not require them to take action. It was only when Shuiyi was killed that the situation became serious. Now the elders could no longer sit still. They wanted the two of them to take action and capture Li Zongjio alive. Although it might be a little difficult, in the eyes of the two, it was not a big deal. If this Li Zongjio didn't know what was good for him, then he would cripple him first before bringing him back. Even if they wanted to capture Li Zongjio alive, they would not let Li Zongjio off so easily. In order to end the battle as quickly as possible, the Tian Sha duo did not bring any more people with them. The rest of the people were just a bunch of trash. There was no point in bringing them along. He might as well do it himself. Great Wu Dynasty. As the only remaining 5 great nations, the current Great Wu Empire could be said to be at its peak. Even when it was defeated by the Great Yin Empire back then, it had also reaped many benefits. Therefore, the Great Wu Empire had developed to a certain extent. It could be said that he had taken advantage of the situation. Now that the Dao nation was flourishing, it could be ranked in the top 3 among the 5 great nations. Just the number of heavenly masters in the nation had exceeded 120. Every heavenly master in the nation was a supreme being expert. If any of them were placed in the Shengwu continent, they would be able to rule over a region and dominate half of the Shengwu continent. If these 100 or so heavenly masters attacked together, the Shengwu continent would probably be blown to smithereens. Of course, it wouldn't be so exaggerated. Although supreme being experts were not weak, there were still forces in the world that could obliterate them. Even Li Zongjio, who was at the peak of 9th grade supreme being in his previous life, did not act presumptuously in the world. Otherwise, he would definitely be obliterated by many of the rules of the world. The situation was not necessarily a good thing. When Shen Wu returned to the Great Wu Dynasty in a sorry state, the entire Great Wu Dynasty was extremely shocked. Shen Wu was the son of the Great Wu Dynasty's Duke Shen, and a disciple of the Sacred Mountain's Sacred Immortal. With such a status, there were not many people in the entire sacred martial realm who could compare to him. Even with such a noble status, there were still people who did not give him any face. Shen Wu was seriously injured to such an extent. One of his legs was broken, and he was stabbed in the body. Although these injuries were not fatal, Such a ruthless attack was obviously not giving him any face. Shen Wu was then treated. When the Great Wu monarch heard the news, he actually went to visit him personally. If he did not take good care of him, it would be troublesome if the Duke Zhen led a rebellion. Therefore, it was necessary to appease the people below. However, when the Great Wu monarch came to inquire about the situation, Shen Wu actually took out the arm of the Duke Zhen, Shen Tianlu. He explained the situation to the Great Wu monarch. The Great Wu dynasty was furious. Someone actually dared to do such a thing to the Duke Zhen of the Great Wu dynasty. If I don't know who is behind this, I will definitely not let them go. The Great Wu monarch immediately summoned all the heavenly masters in the nation. He personally led the team. If anything happened to the Duke Zhen, he would definitely let the world know that when the Great Wu dynasty was angry, the world would tilt. The sun and the moon would change colors. The top warship of the Great Wu dynasty, the Tianwu ship. It could be considered the top warship in the sacred martial realm. If the Tianwu ship's firepower were to explode at the same time, it would be enough to kill a heavenly master in less than 3 minutes. If 10 ships were to attack at the same time, it would only take 3 seconds. It would be enough to kill a supreme being expert. Currently, the Great Wu dynasty had directly mobilized 20 Tianwu ships. The mighty formation broke through the sky. Even when they were attacking the fallen army, the people of the Great Wu dynasty did not necessarily dispatch Tianwu ships. They also did not have such a lineup. When facing their own people, they were as fierce as before. However, when facing outsiders, they were quite cautious. It was extremely despicable. When fighting their own people, they were naturally quite unyielding. However, when facing outsiders, real enemies, they would still choose to preserve their strength. It was really a pity. Fallen City. Jiang Bai was originally prepared to go to Suishan City to gather people to repair Fallen City. However, Li Zongjiu said that it was not necessary. After all, in front of experts like them, the city was indeed as fragile as tofu. It was completely useless. Therefore, it did not matter much to them whether to repair it or not. Destroying it was just a matter of a moment. Jiang Bai thought about it and agreed. However, the prosperity of Fallen City was no longer there. Chapter 1357. However, Li Zongjiu asked Jiang Bai and Chu Yanguan to help him dig a small fish pond, so that Li Zongjiu could fish. Although Li Zongjiu looked like a child, Li Zongjiu was already more than 3,000 years old. He should be at the age of fishing now. He used to be obsessed with alchemy. Now that his cultivation had increased, he had actually become a person who loved to raise fish. With their strength, it was easy for them to dig a small fish pond. They finished it in half a day. Chu Yanguan and Jiang Bai were not far behind Li Zongjiu. They were refining the pill that Li Zongjiu had given them. The overbearing effect of the pill did not explode in their bodies directly. Instead, it felt like it was accumulating in their bodies. As they cultivated, they could absorb the effect of the pill faster and integrate it into their bodies, forming a stronger power. Moreover, the two of them also discovered that if they were to train within a radius of a few dozen meters around Li Zongjiu, the speed and efficiency of their training would be even faster. Thus, the two of them simply sat behind Li Zongjiu to cultivate. Naturally, they were also doing their best to restrain their auras. They could not disturb Li Zongjiu while he was fishing. Otherwise, Li Zongjiu might have directly thrown the two of them to feed the fish. On the evening of the second day after Shen Wu left, the clouds in the sky were especially dazzling. When Li Zongjiu saw the sunset, he was slightly moved. He immediately flew to a high place and sat on a mountain peak to watch the sunset. Speaking of which, the most suitable place to watch this scene was Wuxia City. Li Zongjiu had been out for a long time. The concept of time was not very clear to him, but Li Zongjiu estimated that he had been out for more than half a year. Although he had broken through to the Absolute Saint realm, it was still very far away for him to return to the Xinggu continent. Even if I'm in the Absolute Saint realm, I'm definitely not at my peak. Li Zongjiu could clearly feel that his realm was helping him to come into contact with a more complete cultivation path. This feeling was very difficult to describe with words. It was as if the path was a circle. Now Li Zongjiu was stepping on the circle and had begun to draw a more complete circle. Therefore, Li Zhongjie had a deeper understanding of the cultivation realm. He also understood that there must be more powerful existences that surpassed the Xingwu continent and the Xingwu realm. Such a vast power of heaven and earth. The path of cultivation was not so simple. Boom! Just as Li Zhongjie was admiring the beautiful sunset, and his mind was filled with thoughts, a few terrifying sound waves suddenly came from the clouds in front of him. When they appeared in front of him, a cold glint appeared in Li Zhongjie's eyes. Huh! Boom! 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 The Tianwu ship broke through the sky. It was a spectacular scene. It was as if 20 heaven-devouring beasts had appeared. Jiang Bai and Chu Yinguan, who were in Fallen City, were shocked when they saw the Sky Marshal boat. It's the Tianwu ship of the Great Wu. It's a top warship. Chu Yinguan had seen the Tianwu ship before. Back when the Great Yin country was destroyed, the Sky Marshal boat had appeared. At that time, the people on the Sky Marshal boat had actually watched the Great Yin country perish, and had even taken a lot of things. They were in cahoots with each other. They were truly despicable. Chu Yinguan gritted his teeth when he saw such people. However, the two women's cultivations were unable to breathe under the mighty aura of the Tianwu ship. A strong sense of oppression fell from the sky. The two women's auras were suppressed in their bodies, and could not be released. They were still able to stand on the spot, because they had recently made a breakthrough in their cultivation. If all the Sky Marshal boats locked onto the two of them, death would be the only outcome for them. What a powerful aura! The two women clenched their fists and gritted their teeth. Was this the strength of the Great Wu? Is this the legendary Tianwu ship? If only one Tianwu ship had been sent here, my battle of time would not have been destroyed like this. It's all because of these people. They made my battle of time suffer such a disaster. Jiang Bai was rather angry at the inaction of the Great Wu Empire and the other upper nations. As a nation, they shouldn't expect others to come to their rescue all the time. In the face of such a catastrophe, it was natural for these people to take action. 20 ships. The Great Wu dynasty must have brought most of the heavenly masters from the upper nations. Chu Yinguan could not help but feel nervous. After all, although the Great Wu dynasty was annoying, they were powerful, and were indeed a terrifying existence. It was not easy to contend with the Great Wu dynasty. In the eyes of others, it was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. I wonder if Senior Li Zhongjie will be able to teach them a lesson. Both of them were looking forward to Li Zhongjie's performance. They were looking forward to Li Zhongjie showing off his invincible prowess and beating up the people in front of them. Only then would they feel better. However, the two of them were not worried about Li Zhongjie's life. In their opinion, even if they could not defeat the other party, it would not be difficult for them to escape. The mountain where Li Zhongjie was located was immediately surrounded by 20 Tianwu ships. At the same time, all the weapons on the Tianwu ships were aimed at Li Zhongjie. Who is Li Zhongjie? Hurry up and send the Great Wu Duke back. If even a strand of hair is missing, I will destroy you. The Great Wu country ruler appeared with over 100 heavenly masters behind him. They released their auras at almost the same time. In an instant the sky changed color. It was as if the sky was as thin as a piece of paper. It could not withstand the aura of these people, and was about to be torn apart at any time. However, Li Zhongjie had yet to make a move. Then, he heard the sound of a wave coming from the void. The Great Wu country ruler and the others were shocked. When he saw the situation clearly again, he felt a surge of energy rushing towards the Sky Marshal ship. Boom! One of the Tianwu ships exploded in the sky. The Tianwu ship, which was expensive and could withstand the might of an upper nation heavenly master, exploded in the sky. The Great Wu country ruler and the others did not realize what had happened. After the first ship exploded, the second ship also exploded. Boom! In the end, the 20 Tianwu ships exploded in the sky almost at the same time. They were like giant fireworks that bloomed in the sky above Fallen City. Chapter 1358. Jiang Bai and the others stared at the scene before them with their mouths agape. These heavenly martial arts could be said to be of the highest level of craftsmanship in the sacred martial realm. They actually exploded in the sky in such a way. Who did it? Li Zhongjie? Was this the strength of Senior Li Zhongjie? Of course, it was not Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio originally thought that the fighting strength of these sky martial boats was pretty good. Therefore, he wanted to quickly plunder a few of them and bring them to Luoxia City. Although Luoxia City's strength was already considered to be at the pinnacle of existence. However, it wasn't strange to prepare more powerful forces and powerful secret weapons. After all, who knew if some terrifying monsters would fall from the sky one day, and then there would be another fierce battle and slaughter. If Li Zongjio had such a top-notch warship, he wouldn't have cared how many of them there were. However, just as Li Zongjio was about to make a move and force these people to hand over their sky martial boats, a voice suddenly rang out. Who would have thought that there would actually be two figures who would have destroyed these Tianwu boats before Li Zongjio could? Li Zongjio knew that these people wanted to attack in advance, but Li Zongjio didn't stop them. He just looked at these people and waited for them to do something. Now he could see it clearly. It should be the people from the Beast God Temple. They just happened to be here. In the sky above, flames were constantly exploding and churning. Two figures were also illuminated by the countless flames. The appearance of these two figures did not place the Great Wu Empire's heavenly master in their eyes. Instead, they stared straight at Li Zongjio. Who dares to destroy my Great Wu Heaven Martial Arc? The monarch of Great Martial Kingdom seemed to be very angry. Of course, he would be very angry when encountering such a thing. No one could tolerate such a thing happening. In order to properly display his strength and convince Li Zongjio, it could be said that he had gathered all the experts of the Great Wu Empire. Who would have thought that they would all be eliminated in an instant? This was simply going too far. Most of the Supremes weren't injured by the explosion. After all, they were Supremes, so the explosion of the Sky Martial Arc wasn't able to injure them. They were all nimble and knew how to defend themselves. Over 100 figures hovered above the void. One of them reached out and waved his hand, dispersing the terrifying fluctuation in front of him. The flames and smoke in the surroundings were also easily wiped away. Immediately, everyone saw clearly who was the culprit who had done this. The person who had attacked them was right in front of them. Furthermore, his back was facing them. Wang Chuan turned around to look at the person behind her. I don't want to kill you today. Scram. Wang Chuan immediately waved her hand. It would be a piece of cake for the river of forgetfulness to kill these people. There wasn't even a single absolute saint. Even if all of them worked together, it would only take a single slap to kill them. Impudent. How dare you speak such nonsense in front of the great martial kingdom's ruler? A grand martial heavenly master couldn't bear to watch any longer. He actually wanted so many Supremes to scram? Did he really think that no one would be able to deal with him? Look at how arrogant these people were. They simply didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The great martial kingdom's ruler wasn't a very bright person. With so many experts following behind him, and the top experts of the great martial kingdom were all here, it could be said that this was a display of extremely high combat strength. With so many experts here, they could do whatever they wanted no matter where they went. As long as they didn't go to the sacred mountain, they could even destroy the fallen army. You have guts. Wang Chuan immediately sneered. However, her attention was still on Li Zongjio. You must be Li Zongjio. Come with us, and you still have a chance to live. Wang Chuan said. Guhi didn't like to talk. The cloak behind him was like the waves that were billowing. It looked quite strange. I am. Li Zongjio nodded. We will decide whether to go with you or not. Now, I'm going to settle the account with you. Those airboats and battleships that I liked just now have been damaged by you. Therefore, you have to compensate me for it. Li Zongjio said seriously. It sounded like there was nothing wrong with it. However, after careful consideration, they realized that there was something wrong with it. Although you took a fancy to other people's warships, they still belonged to them. How could you ask for compensation? Moreover, you even went to the Beast God Temple's Sky Demon leader to ask for compensation. Did you feel a little guilty? Wang Chuan and Guhi both smiled slightly. The light that was emitted from his eyes also contained a trace of mockery. I've already said that we can just do it. The elder only said that we want them alive, but not intact. Guhi immediately said. After all, in his opinion, this Li Zongjio was a little too tactless. Therefore, in Guhi's heart, There was nothing to talk about with a fool like Li Zhongjie. The many experts of the Great Wu Empire behind him were all unhappy. What do you mean by this? Are you trying to ignore us? Do you really think we're invisible? I think you're tired of living. Everyone, take the heads of these two people for me, and use it to promote the power of the Great Wu Empire. The Great Wu Empire's emperor was also heroic for a moment, as if he was ready to release the glory of the Great Wu Empire. Across the entire world, let everyone kneel down under the power of the Great Wu Empire. These flies are too noisy. Wang Chuan waved her hand behind her. Gu He turned around, and in the next moment, his figure turned into a wave of light, hiding his figure in the void. At the same time when he reappeared, there was a terrifying light. Boom! Gu He directly swept hundreds of Supreme Being experts into a terrifying wave of water. None of these experts could escape. It was as if they were swept into a whirlpool, and it was difficult to extricate themselves. Boom! The Great Wu Empire's emperor's figure was outside the wave. Outside, he also looked at this scene in a daze. Then, Gu He gently turned his hand, and those Great Wu heavenly masters who were swept into the wave all exploded at this moment. Boom! 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 One by one, their bodies exploded on the spot, and flesh and blood splattered everywhere. It was a simple matter for an absolute saint to kill these so-called Great Wu heavenly masters. Among them, even a 9th-grade Supreme Being couldn't withstand such an attack. A rain of blood fell from the sky above the fallen city. Jiang Bai and Chu Yan held up their umbrellas and looked up at the scene in front of them. Their eyes were filled with shock. Just now, the mysterious expert in front of them made a move, and then wiped out hundreds of Supreme Being experts of the Great Wu Empire. They were all wiped out. Chapter 1359. In fact, this level was far beyond the level of an instant kill. Erasure was just a casual swipe of the hand, and your life would be gone. This was the true meaning of erasure. The great martial monarch still had 2 lackeys by his side. It wasn't because Gu He couldn't kill them, but because he felt that it was good to leave these people alive. Looking at the astonished and shocked expressions on their faces, it felt pretty good. At least it felt pretty good in his heart. The monarch of Great Wu and the others were completely stunned. What kind of situation was this? Were they all killed? My Great Wu's hundreds of heavenly masters are all dead? The monarch of Great Wu was dumbfounded. He even felt that he was dreaming. How could someone be so strong? Why did they have to encounter such a thing at this time? Monarch, they're all dead, all dead. The 2 lackeys beside him also felt their legs go soft. They didn't know how they managed to keep their lives, but they didn't dare to act rashly. Otherwise, if the other party wanted to kill them, it would be a simple matter. They probably just found it interesting, so they left their lives here. They were really vicious. They actually wanted to play with their lives and let them live without dignity. It was really too vicious. They wanted to kill them. In fact, Gu He and the monarch of Great Wu didn't treat them as humans. They only treated them as a few bugs that could be squashed with a wave of their hand. They didn't have any other intentions. It was too easy to kill these people. Now, have you made your decision? Forget Chuan asked. It would be best if this matter could be resolved easily. However, if Li Zhongjie was stubborn, then they could only take action. With their current cultivation, they were always thinking about breaking through. They were almost immersed in cultivation every day. Therefore, they didn't want to do anything else. This time, if it wasn't for the elder calling them out, the 2 of them wouldn't have taken action personally. Letting Li Zhongjie take the initiative to surrender would at least guarantee that Li Zhongjie wouldn't run away. It would be hard to catch him then. Being able to kill Shui Yi, it was enough to prove that Li Zhongjie was not weak. We have another debt. When you killed people just now, you dirted my city. Now if you don't clean it up, you can forget about leaving. Li Zhongjie said slowly. The black dragon hammer appeared in his hand. A trace of lightning flashed on the black dragon hammer. Rumble. It was as if there were thousands of steeds galloping at full speed. Just a simple display of strength was enough to show that he possessed extraordinary strength. Let me, Gu He growled. In the next moment, he also instantly moved. It was as if a monstrous wave had formed, and it swept towards Li Zhongjie furiously. Boom! As the waves surged forward, immediately they surrounded Li Zhongjie. Before they even got close, Li Zhongjie could already feel their power lingering around him. Keep! Li Zhongjie directly summoned the power of hell and sucked Gu He into the world of hell. He also summoned East Coming Saint Immortal and North Sky Saint Immortal to deal with Gu He. East Coming Saint Immortal was trapped in the boundless hell, although only 1 or 2 days had passed in the outside world. In reality, it felt like tens of thousands of years had passed in the boundless hell. Any normal person wouldn't be able to withstand such an endless cycle in the boundless hell. Therefore, Li Zhongjie easily subdued and controlled East Coming Saint Immortal. Since they were going to attack the Beast God Temple, Li Zhongjie thought that it would be better to prepare more experts. When the time came, it would be very useful to send them to their deaths. Gu He was sucked into the boundless hell by Li Zhongjie. Then, the 2 human race Saint Immortals greeted him warmly, which was enough to make Gu He happy for a while. Gu He, who was originally very powerful, was subdued by Li Zhongjie in the blink of an eye. Even Forget Chuan herself was a little surprised. The monarch of Great Wu country saw that the person who had just killed hundreds of Supreme Being experts was also taken away by Li Zhongjie with a wave of his hand. What kind of battle was this? It was so terrifying. In a fight between experts, would they be able to take someone away with just a wave of their hand? If that was the case, it would be too terrifying. However, the monarch of Great Wu country and the others didn't dare to speak or even run away. They, who were in an extremely tense situation, seemed to have realized that they were not at the same level as Li Zhongjie and the others. To be able to capture Shen Tianlu and cut off one of his arms, he must be in the absolute saint realm. However, their habitual thinking told them otherwise. There were only a few Saint Immortals in the world. Therefore, Li Zhongjie couldn't be in the Saint Immortal realm. Otherwise, he must have used some kind of despicable means to deal with Shen Tianlu. Now their army had arrived. Naturally, Li Zhongjie's despicable means would be destroyed. Could it be that he could deal with so many people directly? Despicable means were nothing in the face of absolute power. Very well, you are qualified to make me attack. Forget Chuan seemed to be ready to attack. A silver-white long spear appeared in her hand. There seemed to be clouds surging on the long spear. With a wave of the long spear, a piece of blue sky fell. Such a strong power to kill the sky. She wouldn't attack easily, but once she did, she would break the sky. Swoosh! Forget Chuan waved the long spear in her hand. Immediately, a terrifying power swept towards Li Zhongjie. Although she didn't know what kind of means Li Zhongjie had used to make Gu He disappear, Forget Chuan believed that Li Zhongjie's actions were basically seeking death. If it was too easy, it would be broken. The black dragon hammer in Li Zhongjie's hand also exploded with a crazy power of lightning. Boom! The lightning intertwined in the sky to form a huge net. When they saw this scene, everyone could clearly feel the terror of the power. The monarch of Dao and the others kept retreating. With such a power of lightning, even a light touch would definitely turn them into ashes. Was this the power of the Saint Immortal realm? The monarch of Dao and the others were shocked. These people were worthless in the face of such power. They could be easily killed. As long as they came into contact with the power and were slightly affected, they would be obliterated. With Li Zhongjie's strength, they wanted to deal with Li Zhongjie and show off the strength of Dao. It was simply stupid. Chapter 1360. The monarch of the Great Martial Kingdom and the others were naturally stunned. However, Wang Chuan was also very surprised. After all, Wang Chuan had come into contact with the experts of the human race and had fought with them before. However, Li Zhongjie in front of her was so powerful that she had not felt it for a long time. Boom! The lightning net fell directly downward. The power of the lightning net made Wang Chuan feel as if her body was being burned in a pot of oil. Immediately, a ray of light flashed in Wang Chuan's eyes, following which, scales began to appear on the surface of his body. When the scales appeared, Wang Chuan's body also settled down under the power of the lightning pool. If you want to break through my defense with your lightning power, you are far from being able to do so. Wang Chuan shouted. Then, she waved the long spear in her hand. Suddenly, a sky-shattering power came violently. The space in front of her was also directly slashed apart. A terrifying force whizzed out from it. The monarch of the great martial kingdom and the others were forced to fall from the sky into the fallen city. Just a moment ago, they were still clamoring to destroy the fallen city. Now they were hiding in the city. When the monarch of the great martial kingdom and the others saw Jiang Bai, they were shocked. However, they did not put the two girls in their eyes. Could it be that the two girls could pose a threat to them? However, they did not dare to touch the two girls. Firstly, it was meaningless. Secondly, if the two girls were very important to Li Zongjie and were bullied by them, then Li Zongjie would have to get back at them. With Li Zongjie's violent temper, if he really dealt with Wang Chuan, it would be easy for him to deal with them. At least, when facing Li Zongjie, they could still negotiate a little. Moreover, the one who killed so many heavenly masters of the great martial kingdom was not Li Zongjie. The enmity between the two sides did not need to be so great. After all, Li Zongjie's strength was right there. If it was not a big deal, they could just bear with it. After all, harmony breeds wealth. Sometimes, it was just like this. When one met someone with a slightly more stubborn temper, one would directly admit defeat and not dare to say anything. Naturally, one would not fuss about things that could be forgiven. Moreover, he had to think in his heart that he shouldn't be targeted by others. That was the best way. The battle between Li Zongjie and Wang Chuan had already changed the color of the sky and earth. Moreover, one could clearly see that the surrounding spatial energy had already become distorted following the eruption of the two's power. From the distorted space, one could see traces of a destructive storm forming. These destructive storms were actually formed by spatial undercurrents. Even absolute saints would die if they encountered them. They could barely hold on for a few minutes, but they definitely wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. If a supreme being was caught in this destructive storm, they wouldn't even be able to find their physical body within half a second. Such terrifying power was also unleashed by the two of them. It was truly terrifying. That person can actually travel through this destructive storm. Someone beside the great martial kingdom's monarch exclaimed. With their level of power, they could naturally recognize this destructive storm. However, after seeing it now, they were extremely shocked because Li Zongjie's figure seemed to be ignoring the destructive storm. He came and went as he pleased within the destructive storm. Moreover, when he waved the black dragon hammer in his hand, the light of a dragon's claw seemed to emerge. In the end, after a series of exchanges, there were actually a few wounds on Wang Chuan's body. Even a few of the scales on her body were directly shattered. Fresh blood slowly flowed out from the wounds. Soon after, Forget Chuan also pulled away from Li Zongjie. Staring at Li Zongjie, who was in front of him, the corners of his mouth curved into a sinister smile. No wonder so many people have been defeated by you. Even the elder has asked me to personally capture you. You are indeed very difficult to deal with. Li Zongjie was most annoyed by these people. They obviously could not defeat him, and had to think of another way. But they still had to say a few words to ease the atmosphere. If they really had absolute confidence in defeating Li Zongjie, they would have already done it. They had to wait until now. Moreover, they still had to say some words to cheer him up. These were all signs of lack of confidence. That was why they had such behavior. Therefore, Li Zongjie did not respond. He just looked at the other party quietly, waiting for the other party's next move. Wang Chuan did not expect Li Zongjie to be so straightforward. Then let's do it. The clothes on her body were shattered. At the same time, Wang Chuan's figure also instantly changed. Boom! A huge figure rose into the sky. Even the lightning net in the sky was shattered by a powerful aura at this moment. 9 Abyss Sky Devouring Dragon. The black scales on the dragon's body flickered with cold light. When it appeared, it brought with it a gust of fishy wind. The fishy wind seemed to corrode the surrounding space, and even the destructive storm in front of it. It was forced back little by little under the devouring power of this dark force. It gradually disappeared. Originally, Li Zongjie had relied on his figure to constantly launch surprise attacks on the River of Forgetfulness under such circumstances. However, The river of forgetfulness now had sufficient strength to suppress this destructive storm. It was equivalent to Li Zhongjiu losing his advantage. In addition to Wang Chuan's powerful strength, it was enough to destroy Li Zhongjiu. Sky-eroding qi. Wang Chuan's figure surged into the sky. She swung her tail fiercely. The power around her quickly surged. An extremely cold aura instantly wrapped around Li Zhongjiu. It completely wrapped Li Zhongjiu. He was trapped and could not move. Li Zhongjiu frowned slightly. Wang Chuan, on the other hand, let out a loud laugh from afar. Haha, Li Zhongjiu, you are dead. My sky-eroding qi can only be removed by a saint venerable. With your cultivation, only death awaits you. Wang Chuan was already waiting for Li Zhongjiu to kneel on the ground and beg for mercy. After all, the elder's request was to bring Li Zhongjiu back alive. He absolutely did not dare to disobey the elder's orders. If he angered the elder, even he would not be able to bear the consequences. Only by doing this well, could he have a way to live. Or he could break through the legendary Saint Venerable realm. What was the Saint Venerable realm? Li Zhongjiu did not know. But Li Zhongjiu realized that he was soaking in this evil power. His body actually felt a kind of comfortable feeling. Chapter 1361. He could clearly feel it. The so-called heaven-eroding power was an extremely evil power. If it were anyone else, they would probably be instantly devoured by the heaven-eroding energy. It would be difficult to resist. However, Li Zhongjiu's physique was very different. His physique was originally different from ordinary people. Later, when he was in the chaos bell, it was refined by the chaotic energy and became the chaotic body. At this moment, Li Zhongjiu was actually absorbing the heaven-eroding energy around him. Ancient golden tyrant body art. Li Zhongjiu did not forget to circulate his mental cultivation method and absorb the heaven-eroding energy around him into his body to refine his physical body. His physical body was also refined to a relatively strong state. Forget Chuan was originally prepared to wait for Li Zhongjiu to be completely refined. Her heaven-eroding energy was an innate ability that came with her, not something that she cultivated. Even in the fallen god realm, her heaven-eroding energy could be ranked in the top 10 of the power rankings. Therefore, Li Zhongjiu definitely did not have the strength to resist this move. However, after waiting for half a day, Forget Chuan did not see any changes on Li Zhongjiu's body. She could even see that this kid had actually entered a state of cultivation under the trapping array that she had set up. Are you kidding me? What's going on? This guy is actually absorbing my heaven-eroding energy. Forget Chuan's huge eyes were also filled with shock as she looked at Li Zhongjiu, who was wrapped in her energy. He was actually not affected by the heaven-eroding energy until now. Instead, it was being absorbed by Li Zhongjiu. Even in the fallen god realm, she had never seen such a terrifying existence that could directly absorb her energy and absorb the heaven-eroding energy. What kind of terrifying existence was this? Forget Chuan immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. I don't believe you're invincible. As the leader of the Sky Fiends, how could Wang Chuan be frightened by Li Zhongjiu's strange move? He never dared believe that someone could absorb the power of the sky erosion, and it was the kind of unlimited absorption. Even if Li Zhongjiu could absorb the energy, it must be because he had some kind of treasure on him. That was why he could absorb a certain amount of energy, but it was only temporarily sealed away. It didn't mean that it was directly refined. However, after Li Zhongjiu absorbed it for a while, he realized that his evil lord's body was no longer as curious about the heaven-eroding power. It seemed that this power was not as mysterious as the legends said. Therefore, he gradually lost interest in it. Moreover, it seemed that the other party no longer had any other moves. After a long time, there was still no movement. But in reality, Forget Chuan was already doing her best. Is that all you've got? Li Zhongjiu could not help but sigh. He seemed to be very disappointed in Forget Chuan. What? Forget Chuan's face became extremely ugly. In the next moment, she saw Li Zhongjiu reach out his hand, and a terrifying spear of the sky erosion was condensed in his hand. Moreover, the long spear formed by the heaven-eroding power contained a trace of chaotic power. Go! Li Zhongjiu casually waved his hand, and the long spear in his hand was flung out. As the long spear swept out, it seemed to have quelled all the chaos in the world. The long spear was extremely fast, and it could even be said that it was dozens of times faster than lightning. In the blink of an eye, it rushed in front of Forget Chuan. Even with the power of the 9-abyss heaven-eroding dragon, it had no way to dodge the spear that was flying towards it. "You're attacking me with my power?" 1 inch. The 9-abyss heaven-eroding dragon's heart was full of disdain. Did he not know where this power came from? With such power he rushed in front of it. At first, the 9-abyss heaven-eroding dragon did not take it seriously. He even thought that Li Zongjio was wasting his energy. However, in the next moment, the long spear directly pierced through him. The chaotic power was like a terrifying torpedo that rushed into his body, and then began a real bombardment. Bang! 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 The 9-abyss heaven-eroding dragon only felt that his body seemed to be rapidly collapsing at this moment. Boom! His body fell rapidly from the sky. Before the 9-abyss heaven-eroding dragon could react, the sharp pain had already spread throughout his body. His mind was blank, and there was no other feeling. So this was the feeling after being severely injured. The 9-abyss heaven-eroding dragon had not suffered such a serious injury for a long time. It had been at least 1,000 years since he had broken through to the absolute saint realm, and he had never suffered such a serious injury. It was as if a huge steel fork, surrounded by sharp blades, had pierced into his body. It began to spin and churn crazily. His body was easily minced into a pile of useless mud. Boom! The 9-abyss heaven-eroding dragon's body fell from the sky. After Li Zongjio made his move, he only used this one move to deal with the River of Forgetfulness. When the monarch of Great Martial Kingdom and the other two saw Li Zongjio's beautiful counterattack, they were shocked. Li Zongjio was even more shocked. It was obvious that Li Zongjio had even more power and techniques up his sleeves. Just now, he suddenly felt that things weren't going to be fun anymore. So he directly took action and killed his opponent. So terrifying. At this moment, the monarch of Great Martial Kingdom recognized him. When the 9-abyss heaven-eroding dragon's body appeared, the monarch of Great Martial Kingdom had already guessed it. The leader of Beast God Temple's Sky Demons. The real Sky Demons. Even when they attacked the Great Yin Dynasty, the leader of Sky Demons did not even personally take action, and he had already destroyed the Great Yin Dynasty. Only the 7 Saint Immortals of the Saint Mountain had once joined forces to fight with the leader of Sky Demons. Later on, it was said that they were evenly matched. At least, the 7 Saint Immortals did not suffer much damage. As for whether they managed to defeat the other party, it was even more unknown. Now the leader of Sky Demons, he had directly fallen in the hands of this young man in front of him. The funny thing was that he had wanted to kill this young man in front of him. It was a little too ridiculous. But now the situation of the Great Wu Dynasty was almost the same. It had been destroyed. So many heavenly masters had been killed by the people of the Beast God Temple. The Great Wu Dynasty had completely fallen. It would become a powerless dynasty. The power and status that they enjoyed now would soon be devoured. This made the monarch of Great Martial Kingdom feel like his heart was dead. No, if my Great Wu Dynasty still wants to grasp this last chance of survival, it can only be Li Zongjio, Heavenly Master Li. The monarch of Great Martial Kingdom's eyes suddenly lit up. Just a moment ago, he had brought people to challenge Li Zongjio, and even wanted to completely crush Li Zongjio. However, in the blink of an eye, he was already thinking of how to beg Li Zongjio to protect him. Chapter 1362. The huge corpse of the 9-abyss heaven-devouring dragon fell to the ground. Li Zongjio's figure returned to Fallen City. Until now, the other Gu he had been wandering in this boundless hell for quite some time. He was constantly being mobilized. Li Zongjio was not in a hurry. Gu He's physique was rather special. Although his strength was slightly weaker than Wang Chuan's, if he could stimulate his potential in the future, he would be a very scary guy. He wanted to keep the 9-abyss heaven-devouring dragon alive, but he was careless when he attacked him just now. Therefore he killed him. Since he was dead, then so be it. It didn't matter if there was one more or one less. Li Shengxian. I'm the monarch of the Great Wu Dynasty. I failed to recognize Mount Tai and offended you. Please forgive me. The Grand Martial Kingdom's monarch had a humble expression on his face as he bowed and bowed in front of Li Zhongjiu. Li Zhongjiu glanced at the monarch of the Great Wu dynasty indifferently. "Is there anything you need from me?" Li Zhongjiu asked. He then asked Jiang Bai and the other two to cut off some of the key parts of the 9 Abyss Heaven-devouring dragon. After all, Li Zhongjiu was a god-grade alchemist. The body of the 9 Abyss Heaven-devouring dragon was a good material for refining medicine. Of course, he could not waste it. Otherwise, it would be a sin. "I've offended you before. Please forgive me, Lord Saint Immortal." The Emperor of Great Martial Country saw that he had been neglected, but he did not seem to care at all. What kind of status did the other party have? Of course, he would not be so polite to the other party. If he was so polite to the other party, what would happen? Therefore, the monarch of the Great Wu dynasty understood that strength was everything. "You don't have to call me Saint Immortal. That name doesn't suit me. Just call me Evil Lord." Li Zhongjiu said without hesitation. "Evil Lord. Evil Lord, so be it, Evil Lord. You can call me whatever you want." "Yes, yes, Lord Evil Lord. Previously, I heard that the traitor of my Great Wu Empire, Shen Tianlu, had offended you, Lord Evil Lord. Therefore, I specially came forward to capture this guy and await Lord Evil Lord's punishment." "So you're not here to cause trouble for me?" Li Zhongjiu glanced at the monarch of Dao country. His skin was really thick. No wonder he could become the monarch of this country. As for the two subordinates of the Great Martial Kingdom's ruler, they felt as though they had lost all their dignity. They slowly turned around and no longer spoke. It was extremely humiliating. Although the Great Wu dynasty's heavenly masters were not killed by Li Zhongjiu, it was still a fact. However, it was also related to Li Zhongjiu. Li Zhongjiu clearly had the ability to save them, but he just stood by. This was equivalent to murdering them in disguise. If Li Zhongjiu had heard these people's thoughts, he would have immediately twisted their heads off. They were really scheming. "Of course not, Lord Evil Lord. What are you talking about? We have specially come to pay you a visit." The monarch of Dao country was pleasantly surprised when he heard that Li Zhongjiu was still able to continue the conversation. He thought that there was definitely a chance. That was great. He had also heard that Li Zhongjiu seemed to be very interested in the Sky Martial ship. The monarch of Dao country hurriedly took out a ship ring. The ship ring in his hand was none other than a Sky Martial ship. Although 20 Sky Martial ships had been brought out this time, which was equivalent to the entire Great Wu dynasty's national strength, this did not mean that the Great Wu dynasty only had 20 Sky Martial ships left. In fact, the Great Wu dynasty only had about 50 Sky Martial ships in stock. There would always be some backup plans. It was precisely this kind of plan that would allow them to avoid losing all hope when the situation took a turn for the worse. Furthermore, as long as it was put into production, the number of Sky Martial ships would be restored very quickly. This is the best version of the Sky Martial ship. Even in the entire Great Wu dynasty, there are only 3 of them. "Please kindly accept it, Lord Evil Lord." The monarch of Dao country humbly offered his greeting gift with both hands. Li Zhongjiu didn't even look at it. He directly took the things the other party gave him without the slightest bit of embarrassment or hesitation. "Only one?" Li Zhongjiu asked casually. Yes, yes. However, the stock has been destroyed. As long as Lord Evil Lord comes to the Great Wu dynasty, I will immediately give the order to start production. We will definitely be able to build 20 Sky Martial ships within a year." Just the construction of these 20 Sky Martial arcs had cost a lot of money. However, over 100 heavenly masters have been killed. This was equivalent to reducing a large amount of funds. It could be said that there was more than enough money to build 20 Sky Martial ships. In fact, it would be a waste of money for the Great Wu dynasty to support so many heavenly masters. Sometimes, it wasn't that they were unwilling to go to war. However, losing 1 or 2 heavenly masters would be a huge loss for the dynasty. The money they had spent previously would be wasted, and there would be no returns. Who would be willing to do such a thankless task? However, as long as they had a good grasp of Li Zhongjiu, the Great Wu dynasty would be able to save a large amount of military funds. They could do anything with this money. "You want me to go to your Great Wu dynasty?" Great Wu dynasty. Oh, you want me to go to the Great Wu Dynasty? Li Zhongjiu said indifferently. If we are lucky enough to invite Lord Evil Lord, it will naturally be a blessing for the people of the Great Wu Dynasty. The monarch of Dao country hurriedly said excitedly. There's hope. There's really hope. All right, I have a condition. Li Zhongjiu said indifferently. Senior Evil Lord, please speak your mind. The monarch of Dao country patted his chest as if to say that no matter what Lin Fan said, he would fulfill it for Lin Fan. He was not afraid of any condition. As long as Lin Fan could state it, he would agree to it. Girl Chu, come here. Li Zhongjiu directly called for Chu Yingguan to come over. Chu Yingguan was currently helping Li Zhongjiu harvest the scales of the serpent dragon. When she heard Li Zhongjiu's summon, Chu Yingguan was both surprised and happy. She did not know what this meant. After all, Li Zhongjiu rarely summoned her. Senior. Chu Yingguan came before Li Zhongjiu. Lin Fan glanced at the monarch of Dao country emotionlessly. How about this? Divide your Dao country's territory into two. Give half to this girl to manage, and I will sit in the middle. Neither side will have any problems. What do you think? Li Zhongjiu smiled as he looked at the monarch of Dao country. Divide into two. Sit in the middle. The monarch of Dao country was stunned when he heard this. Instantly, he felt as if there was a thorn in his back. He wanted to divide his territory. Chapter 1363. He wanted to give up half of the territory. If it was just 1 or 2 cities, it wouldn't matter. In the Great Wu Dynasty, there were more than 30 cities. It was considered an extremely large sphere of influence. Although losing 1 or 2 cities was quite painful, it didn't matter as it didn't affect the big picture. But now Li Zhongjiu actually wanted to take half of it. He wanted to take away 15 cities. Was there a mistake? In this chaotic world, it was already very amazing to be able to preserve one's own territory. It wasn't easy to preserve the territory, but now he had to hand over half of it. Moreover, he had to hand it over to this little girl. This little girl had a background. Could it be that she was Evil Lord's lover and wanted to be a king for once? Even Chu Yingguan was shocked when he heard this. He never thought that such a thing would happen to him. Although Chu Yingguan's lifelong dream was to restore the country and kill these monsters of the fallen race at the same time. However, these 2 wishes were unattainable. How could there be such a good thing? But now, such a good thing just happened to fall directly on his head. He couldn't even believe that this was real. Jiang Bai also sucked in a breath of cold air when he heard this from afar. He never thought that Li Zhongjiu would be so generous. This evil lord, Naturally, the great martial emperor was extremely unwilling. In fact, he even thought to himself, how can I agree to such a thing? Whoever agrees to it is a fucking idiot. If you don't agree, you don't have to go back. Li Zhongjiu patted the great Wu emperor's shoulder and said with a smile. You have the map, right? Take it out. Li Zhongjiu said to one of the heavenly masters. When the other party heard Li Zhongjiu's words, he was stunned. Then, he subconsciously took out the map of the Great Wu Dynasty. There were a total of 31 cities marked on it. Without any explanation, Li Zhongjiu tore the map into 2 halves. Half of it, 16 cities, were given to Chu Yingguan. The other half was returned to the king of Grand Martial Kingdom. It's settled then. Hey! The great martial emperor did not understand what he had experienced. Today, not only had he lost over 100 heavenly masters and over 100 supremes, he had also lost more than half of his territory. What he had kept was actually only the smaller half. It was Li Zhongjiu's idea. He was clear in his heart. If he didn't agree, they would kill him. Then he would take all the land for himself. What can you do? That was how arrogant and willful he was. It was truly unbelievable. Li Zhongjiu was so ruthless. The monarch of Grand Martial Kingdom didn't know what to say. Don't worry, with me around, no one will dare to touch a single blade of grass or tree of yours. Li Zhongjiu said calmly. That was true. There was a sage immortal overseeing it. With a sage immortal overseeing it, there was no need to be afraid of anyone coming to cause trouble. Who would dare to come? Even the leader of the sky demons was lying on the ground, dismembered. The monarch of Grand Martial Kingdom should be thankful. He could still keep at least half of his territory. Thank you. Thank you, Lord Evil Lord. The monarch of Grand Martial Kingdom seemed to be swallowing blood into his stomach as he said those words. Even in such a situation, he had to force a smile and be grateful to Li Zongjio. Chu Yanguan had never thought that such a thing would happen. What was even more unexpected was that Li Zongjio had only casually asked, and the monarch of Grand Martial Kingdom had no choice but to agree. If he didn't agree, Li Zongjio would definitely not let him have an easy time. This was the symbol of strength, the benefits of strength, and the convenience it brought. It was so easy that there was no suspense at all. The monarch of Grand Martial Kingdom did not dare to disagree. Thank you, Senior Evil Lord. Chu Yanguan immediately knelt down and kowtowed to Li Zongjio. Since Li Zongjio had helped Chu Yanguan, Li Zongjio had naturally become their guardian. If anything happened to Chu Yanguan's country, he would be offending Li Zongjio. There was an invisible layer of such a powerful protective shield around them. I'll leave these two to you, Li Zongjio said as he waved his hand and summoned East Coming Sage Immortal and North Sky Sage Immortal. After the two landed, they did not look strange on the surface. However, they were obviously different from before. Greetings, Master. The two of them bowed to Li Zongjio. This frightened the monarch of Grand Martial Kingdom. Isn't this East Coming Sage Immortal, North Sky Sage Immortal? How did these two Sage Immortals? What exactly had the monarch of Grand Martial Kingdom experienced today? Even if he told others, not many people would believe him. Just based on what the monarch of Grand Martial Kingdom had seen, he could not believe it. The monarch of Grand Martial Kingdom was extremely shocked. However, he had seen it with his own eyes. He had no choice but to believe it. The two sage immortals of the sacred mountain actually addressed this young man as their master. No wonder Li Zongjio could easily kill the leader of the sky demons, Wang Chuan. This was a powerful 9-abyss sky-devouring dragon. It was so pitiful that it could be killed in minutes. However, now that Li Zongjio had become the master of the two sage immortals, it was no longer strange. Wouldn't it be a piece of cake to kill this puny Forget Chuan? Even when the Darwa dynasty was at its peak, it didn't possess the full support of a saint immortal. Now, this little girl's dynasty had just been established, yet she'd actually obtained the assistance of two saint immortals. Would anyone else dare act rashly? The monarch of Grand Martial Kingdom had already made up his mind to curry favor with Chu Yanguan. Just a moment ago, he was still immersed in the regret and pain of losing his territory. Now, in the blink of an eye, he was already thinking about how to curry favor with Chu Yanguan. The difference between the changes before and after was indeed a little big. He was even glad that he had agreed to Li Zongjio's request. Otherwise, the entire Grand Martial Kingdom would have been conquered by Li Zongjio. After that there would be nothing for him to do. Alright, take Jiangbai with you. The rest of you can go and deal with your own matters, Li Zongjio said. Now he had captured two sage immortals of the sacred mountain. In addition, the so-called sky demons of the beast god temple were almost completely annihilated. Although there were still some members of the sky demons, these people probably wouldn't dare to appear in front of Li Zongjio. He could easily wipe them out. They weren't a threat at all. What he had to face next was the so-called assassination palace. After that it would be the elders of the beast god temple. Since he heard that these people were busy with the teleportation formation, Li Zongjio certainly could not let them proceed so smoothly. Later, he must find a way to destroy some of these people's arrangements. With great strength, one could be so unfettered, coming and going without a trace. However, now he had to wait for Qi Yinran to complete her breakthrough. He did not know how much time it would take. Therefore Li Zongjio gave Chu Yen, Guan Guan, and the others a big deal. These people wandered around him every day, and Li Zongjio found it annoying. Chapter 1364. Since Li Zongjio had entrusted Chu Yinguan with an important task, Chu Yinguan naturally could not disappoint Li Zongjio. Under the protection of the two saint immortals, she took Jiangbai and went to take over her city. The change of power in the Great Wu dynasty had shocked everyone. They even thought that the Great Wu Emperor had gone mad. It was only later that the Great Wu Emperor found out that Chu Yinguan was actually the former princess of the Great Yin dynasty. It was not easy for her to endure humiliation and live until now. Evidently, this weak flame of the Great Yin dynasty had already started to burn. Although the Great Yin dynasty had lost countless people in battle back then, there were still many remaining subordinates scattered everywhere. There were always some who survived. Now that the flag of the Great Yin dynasty had been raised again, the Great Yin dynasty had summoned all the soldiers of the Great Yin dynasty. He also summoned all the soldiers of the Great Yin dynasty back. Although there were not many of them, they were still a considerable force. However, because the Great Yin dynasty was destroyed too quickly, they did not have the chance to rise again even if they wanted to. Hence, they had been hiding until now. Now that they heard that the flag of the Great Yin dynasty had been raised again, they came from all directions. In the cities that originally belonged to the Great Wu dynasty, many people were very dissatisfied with the management of a mere princess of the Great Yin dynasty. They even found an opportunity to raise their own troops. However, they were soon suppressed by the power of the two Saint Immortals, and directly knelt on the ground and admitted defeat. After becoming stronger, it became easier to speak. The Great Wu Empire's strength had directly shrunk by half, yet they did not show any signs of doing so. Instead, they were still reorganizing their strength, gathering their strength, and continuing to nurture more sovereign-level experts. Otherwise, they really did not know how to continue. Now, the Great Wu dynasty could be said to have suffered a heavy blow and tribulation. The other dynasties were not clear about the situation here. However, after knowing that the Great Yin dynasty and the Great Wu dynasty had two Saint Immortals in charge, they panicked. Although it seemed strange, they did not dare to meddle in other people's business. Otherwise, if the Saint Immortals took action, no matter how many heavenly masters there were, it would be useless. More importantly, the way Sage Immortals did things was unpredictable. Could it be that one wanted to guess the Sage Immortals' intentions? The several Saint Immortals in the Sacred Mountain also felt quite strange. They even wanted to summon the two back, but the two acted as if they did not hear anything. Ever since he went to Li Zongjiu's place, the situation between the two of them had become somewhat inexplicable. After several exchanges, they left the matter unsettled. The situation in the sacred martial realm was generally stable. Small-scale battles with the fallen tribe were still frequent occurrences. But now there was a reciprocity. There was a very young general in the Great Yin dynasty. Command of the army was. It was also on this battlefield that they often clashed with the armies of the fallen race. Most of the time, they had the upper hand. He had truly displayed the combat strength of the human race. Even the people of the Yen was Yen was of the Yen in him. Was they not to the realm experts of the Yen dynasty? Of course they were not. Anyway, there would be such an ultimate battle sooner or later. Naturally, there was nothing to be afraid of. Now that they were so rampant, of course, they would capture one of them and kill one of them. Decisive punishment. Otherwise, they would really think that they were easy to bully. However, war had always been a waste of manpower and resources. Although Chu Yanguan had the support of almost the entire sacred martial realm, he could not always advance by leaps and bounds. He needed to be very steady in his progress. A year's time passed in a hurry. Li Zongjiu had been guarding Qi Yinran. During this year, there were also people from the assassination palace who came to seek death. They were all buried by Li Zongjiu. Sometimes, when Li Zongjiu felt bored, he would keep these people alive and play some cruel games on them to kill time. The name of Evil Lord was indeed well-deserved. Sometimes Li Zongjiu would even deliberately let a few people go. Beside Li Zongjiu, Huo Wushuang's figure condensed. She was also controlling the fallen city's array in her palm. It seemed that the entire fallen city was condensed in Huo Wushuang's palm. Under such circumstances, Huo Wushuang seemed to have sensed something and magnified a location in the city. A human boy ran in. He's here to look for treasures again. Li Zongjiu could not help but say. Occasionally, Li Zongjiu would place some things around the fallen city. This was because the fallen city seemed to be an extremely mysterious existence to the outside world. It was also the place where the largest battlefield once took place. It directly caused the fallen race to lose millions of people. Therefore, there were many hidden places in the fallen city. Therefore, there were often people who took the risk to come here. In the fallen city, they could often find some good things. Of course, there were also dangers. The fallen race would usually come to such a place, just like the humans. It seemed to have become a training ground. However, no one could get close to the core of the fallen city, because it was shrouded in an array. Once one got close, they would be trapped in the array, and would not be able to find their way out. There were also rumors that there was a mysterious existence living in the center of the fallen city. If one could be accepted as a disciple by this mysterious existence, it would be a supreme honor. It was said that the current Great Yin Dynasty's empress was the disciple of this legendary existence. It was said that she was just a registered disciple. There were too many rumors in the outside world, and there was no way to verify it. Obviously, this boy had heard of this legend and wanted to break into the forbidden area of the fallen city. Whoosh! Can he break the array? Li Zhongjiu asked curiously. I remember now. This boy came here 7 days ago. At that time he almost found a way, but I increased the difficulty at the last moment, so he did not succeed. Huo Wuxia scratched her head. Well, let's see his performance. Li Zhongjiu was also quite curious. If there was really someone who could break Huo Wuxia's array formation, then it meant that this person's talent and strength were extraordinary. Moreover, this person had come here in such a big way. So, Li Zhongjiu didn't mind fulfilling this person's wish. Chapter 1365. The Outer Ring of the Fallen City. The Fallen City was divided into 3 rings, the Inner Ring and the Outer Ring. The Outer Ring belonged to the Outer Ring, while the Inner Ring was the core. As long as one stepped into the Outer Ring, it was equivalent to walking into the array. If one could break into the Inner Ring, it meant that one was quite outstanding. If one could break into the second ring from the Inner Ring, one would be able to obtain some random treasures. The value of these treasures was difficult to measure. Some were good and some were bad. It was said that some time ago, someone directly obtained a 9th grade elixir. However, the real core was still within the first ring. It was said that if one could break through and go deeper, one would be able to meet a legendary person. A young man wearing a broken hat, carrying a medicine basket, and a teddy bear on his waist was standing on the street of the Outer Ring. He was using a bamboo stick as a support. Although his body was small and thin, his eyes were filled with power. Come, let's charge, young man. The youth with the broken hat put away his belt. At the same time, he checked the little teddy bear doll on his waist. He wore a pair of straw sandals on his feet, and began to sprint in the midst of this chaos with a certain movement technique. Although the terrain in front of him was chaotic, the young man's body was as light as a swallow. He was not walking in a straight line, but he was constantly choosing to circle around his body. Whoosh! Whoosh! The stones under his feet were also very sturdy, so he quickly rushed out with his body. Boom! Li Zhongjiu and Huo Wuxiang were in front of him, looking at the young man who was showing off his skills. Moreover, the young man seemed to have seen through the defensive array and the maze array. Almost every step he took was incomparably accurate. He happened to be stepping on the node of the array formation, so the array formation in front of him was useless to him. Strengthen it. Li Zhongjiu could not help but say. With this speed, the young man was about to break the array. Of course, Huo Wuxiang could not let the young man rush in so easily, otherwise he would lose face. Therefore, Huo Wuxiang also activated the formation. Over the past year, Huo Wuxiang's cultivation had reached its peak. She had even broken through along with Li Zhongjiu's breakthrough. He was already an absolute saint. If Shuiyi was still alive, and tried to break through the formation again, Huo Wuxiang would definitely be able to deal with him easily. After all, Huo Wuxiang's strength was terrifying now. Huo Wuxiang directly raised the difficulty of the array to the 9th level. Li Zhongjiu looked at the young man's agile figure. He was slightly surprised. This was because this young man had completed this series of movements entirely with his own body. Looking at the way the latter had broken the formation, where did this kind of strength come from? It really made people very curious. The young man's movements were extremely agile. The pile of rocks in front of him suddenly rose up, forming a wall that was at least 30 meters tall. If it was someone who possessed essence energy cultivation, it would naturally be very easy to charge up. However, the young man only knew a little bit of martial arts. 30 meters was only the surface. In fact, if he climbed directly, he would have to climb at least 3 kilometers to reach the top. This kid, he actually made it this far. Li Zongjie was very surprised to see this scene. It was clear that Huo Wushuang had increased the difficulty of the formation, but still couldn't stop the young man. Now, the final trial was completely dependent on the young man's perseverance. It looked like it was only 30 meters tall, but in fact it felt like it was endless. This was the mysterious and terrifying thing about this kind of formation. Often, some people would directly collapse under such circumstances. It was naturally a good thing to have a visible goal. At least, it was something that could be done. However, if you couldn't see your goal, then you would fall into a state of endless despair. Phew! Last trial, all the best. The young man seemed to know that this was the last trial. There were also many wounds on his body and feet. However, he didn't care about treating his wounds. There were many wounds on his body. However, he didn't seem to be in any pain, as if he had long been accustomed to it. Li Zongjie and Huo Wushuang observed the young man in the formation for 3 whole days. During these 3 days, the young man had been constantly climbing up the cliff. Occasionally, there would be thunder and rain. However, under such circumstances, the young man would usually lie down on a cliff and rest for half an hour, using a water bottle to collect rainwater to drink. As for food, he had been eating a kind of emerald green leaf in the basket on his back. This kind of leaf had a little energy in it, but it couldn't satisfy his hunger. This guy had completely relied on his perseverance to reach this point. He's about to reach the top. Huo Wushuang said. Even in the eyes of some top experts, this was quite an impossible thing. Now the young man was about to succeed. Huo Wushuang couldn't help but be a little surprised. He's too arrogant. Li Zongjie said. This guy was just an ordinary person. It was a miracle that he could break through the formation. If it was really so easy for him to break through, how could he Li Zongjie put his face? After all, he was the evil lord. Just when the young man was about to reach the top, a trace of surprise flashed in the young man's eyes, because he had already felt that the highest point was calling him, and he was about to succeed, when the young man's hand patted on the highest point of the stone. As long as he used a little strength, he could reach the top. After crossing the formation, he would reach the core of Fallen City, find the legendary person, and then ask him for help. Crack! Suddenly, a crisp sound of breaking was heard. The young man looked down and saw that his belt had suddenly broken. Although his pants were still there, the little bear toy that had been attached to it directly fell from the sky. My little bear! At this moment, the young man didn't hesitate at all and directly fell from the sky. He grabbed the little bear. Hugging the teddy bear in his arms, he slammed himself against the rock wall. Bang! At this moment, the young man clearly felt that a few of his bones were broken, because this was a solid hit on the rock. No one can be arrogant in front of me. Li Zongjie was very proud. Just now, he was the one who secretly made a move. Naturally, he also thought that the latter valued this little bear very much, so he deliberately used this little bear to test the latter. After a little test, he could see that this young man was a promising talent. Especially the moment when he jumped down, it was very suitable for Li Zongjie's temper. Well, it seems that I have to save him. Falling from such a height, the latter would only end up with a broken body. Even if he fell to pieces, Li Zongjie still had a way to save him. Even if he died on the spot, Li Zongjie still had a way to save him from the gates of hell in less than 2 hours. But in that case it was a little troublesome. It would save time and effort to save him before he fell to his death. However, just when Li Zongjie was about to make a move, at the side Huo Wushuang's eyes widened. Look! Li Zongjie looked at the projection. A bloody hand was tightly grasping the edge of a rock. The other hand was holding the little bear toy. The young man's teeth were tightly clenched, and the pain in his body seemed to be nothing. Oh, this kid is a little interesting. Li Zongjie was also a little surprised. In this day and age, it was still possible to see a person with such a strong will. He was even more outstanding than Li Zongjie in the past. For such a person, Li Zhongjiu's choice was to completely trample him to death, or fish him up and train him well. Chapter 1366. In the end, Li Zhongjiu did not make a move. This was because this young man actually used only one hand to forcefully crawl up again. It sounded quite unbelievable and shocking. It could even be said that it made people turn pale with fright. No one had ever heard of such a determined person. At the top of the rock wall, Li Zhongjiu and Huo Wushuang welcomed the young man together. After the young man reached the top, he fainted completely. However, Li Zhongjiu did not mind. He used his own strong yuan qi to nourish the young man's body. He fed the young man a grade 9 elixir pill and helped the young man to refine it. During the refining process, Li Zhongjiu also taught the young man the ancient golden body technique. After all, the young man's body was very suitable for such a cultivation technique. After a little cultivation, he would be able to reach a relatively strong realm. In 2 days, not only had the young man fully recovered from his injuries, but he had also made his physical body enter the Yuan monarch realm. Given the young man's willpower, he would be able to put up a fight even if the Yuan emperor came. This was because this encounter was equivalent to reaching the sky in a single bound. Ordinary people would need a lot of time and energy just to cultivate to the Yuan monarch realm. However, Li Zhongjiu only needed 2 days to do so. It was done directly. In this world, only Li Zhongjiu could have such terrifying strength. The young man suddenly sat up from the bed. He seemed to have had a very long nightmare. When he flipped over and got up, he quickly scanned his surroundings. I am not dead. I am not in hell. Although the young man had been in a coma for 2 days, the process was quite terrifying. It was as if he had been tortured inhumanly. Even in a coma, he did not feel good. The whole process was quite torturous. Therefore, the young man thought that he had fallen into hell. However, when he woke up, he found that he was not in hell, but in a clean room. Is this Senior Evil Lord? The young man quickly shouted. The young man didn't seem to be interested in the changes in his body. He only wanted to find Evil Lord as soon as possible. When she rushed out of the door, she saw Li Zhongjiu fishing. You are Senior Evil Lord? When the young man saw Li Zhongjiu, he immediately guessed Li Zhongjiu's identity. Li Zhongjiu was a little surprised. Your eyes are quite sharp. Li Zhongjiu looked back at the young man. In fact, the two of them looked about the same age, but the youth with the broken hat appeared to be more immature, while Li Zhongjiu appeared to be more mature and mysterious. When he saw Li Zhongjiu's appearance, the young man was clearly surprised. This was because Li Zhongjiu was too young. However, the young man also believed that his eyes wouldn't lie to him. Why are you looking for me? Li Zhongjiu said indifferently. Although Li Zhongjiu looked like a teenager on the surface, he was actually an old monster who was more than 3,000 years old. Thanks to his face, he looked so young. Some people always thought that Li Zhongjiu was easy to bully, so Li Zhongjiu had killed many people who pretended to be pretentious over the years. Senior Evil Lord, please save my sister. The young man directly came in front of Li Zhongjiu and knelt down on the spot. Senior Evil Lord, please save my sister. Fu Ding is willing to do anything to repay Senior Evil Lord. The young man's name was Fu Ding. It was a strange name. Why is it such an old-fashioned request? Can't you be more creative? When Li Zhongjiu heard the young man's words, he was so angry that the fishing rod in his hand shook twice. He didn't even have the slightest intention. It was easy to guess. Then, Senior Evil Lord, please grant my sister a long and healthy life. The young man's brain worked quite fast, and when he spoke, he didn't have any scruples. When Li Zhongjiu heard this, he almost threw his fishing rod at him. A long and healthy life? Do you want your sister to die in front of you so much? Li Zhongjiu said. What's your name? My name is Fu Ding. Fu Ding said. Fu Ding, your name is really unpleasant. Li Zhongjiu said unceremoniously, as if he was deliberately saying this to attack the young man. However, the young man didn't care. He only cared about whether Li Zhongjiu was willing to save his sister. Okay, don't be so serious. Go and bring your sister here. Li Zhongjiu said. The great evil lord wasn't a stingy person. Li Zhongjiu liked the young man in front of him very much. Therefore he admired him very much. There was nothing wrong with lending a helping hand, especially now that Li Zongjio's state of mind had changed greatly. Now that he had broken through to the absolute saint realm, he had reached a new height. He was an existence that people could only look up to in his previous life. Now the number of absolute saints who had been killed by him could be counted on one hand. Now Li Zongjio was also trying to find the barrier to the absolute saint realm. At least, Li Zongjio knew that there were stronger existences one level above him. For example, the master of the Beast God Temple. To be able to convince so many experts of the Beast God Temple and make them willing to give up everything for the Beast God Temple. It was enough to show that the Beast God Temple had its own unique charm. To make these people give up their lives for the Beast God Temple. At least in the information that Li Zongjio had obtained, there was a mysterious temple master in the Beast God Temple. As for the identity of the temple master, what he was doing now, and how strong he was, Li Zongjio didn't know. In fact, the only people in the Beast God Temple who knew were the elders who hadn't fought yet. Even the leader of the sky demons, Wang Chuan, was killed by Li Zongjio. The next step up was to become an elder. The elders of the Beast God Temple were present. Ever since they came to the sacred martial realm, they had not taken any action. From the beginning to the end, they had been worrying about the Beast God Temple. As for the fight for the land, they had left it all to Tian Sha and the others. Now Li Zongjio had almost wiped out the sky demons. The warriors of the fallen tribe below were constantly being reaped by the attacks of the great Yin dynasty. After Li Zongjio had touched upon this level, he had his own considerations when it came to accepting disciples. After all, Li Zongjio also found that the kid in front of him seemed to be quite talented. Is that true? Senior Evil Dominator, Fu Ding's eyes were filled with hope and shock. He couldn't believe it. Chapter 1367. Li Zongjio did not go with Fu Ding. Instead, he asked Fu Ding to bring his sister over. After all, Fu Ding was comparable to an Yuan monarch now. Even if he encountered some fallen race warriors along the way, he would be able to kill them easily. The round trip would only take 2 days. Fu Ding actually carried a small bamboo palanquin and brought his sister over. Senior, this is my sister. She was fine about half a month ago, but she fell into a coma. All kinds of doctors have been looking for her, but they couldn't do anything about it. When Li Zongjio saw Fu Ding's sister, he placed her on a piece of warm jade that was as big as a bed in order to nourish her body. These things were sent over by Chu Yan's steward. After all, if it weren't for Li Zongjio, Chu Yingguan would not have had his current achievements and status. The person he was most grateful to was, of course, Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio would certainly not be polite about these things. The resources in the sacred martial realm were much more abundant than expected. Moreover, many experts of the sacred martial realm had fallen one after another because of this battle. This had resulted in the current state of affairs. After the fall of these experts, the resources in the sacred martial realm had become even more abundant. In comparison, the sacred martial continent was really just a small piece of land. It looked very backward. Let me take a look. Li Zongjio came to the front of Fu Ding's sister. The little girl's eyes were tightly shut. Although her face was a little dirty, it was still obvious that she had an exquisite little face. However, the little girl was now unconscious. Her breathing was normal. Even her heartbeat was normal. Li Zongjio examined her. At first glance, he already knew that the little girl was probably in big trouble. Your sister has a very strong constitution, Li Zongjio said slowly after observing for a while. A very strong constitution? The latter was also slightly surprised. Fu Ding and his sister had lived in a small county within the great martial empire since they were young. Both of their parents had died, and they were homeless. It was already very good for them to be able to make a living. There was no chance for him to cultivate. However, Fu Ding had discovered that his body was different from others since he was a child. Although he would sometimes suffer serious injuries, Fu Ding's recovery ability was different from that of ordinary people. He was able to heal himself quickly, even if his body was exhausted. As long as his willpower persisted, his body would persevere. For some normal people, the body was the body. and the will was the will. Even if you want to continue, your body will tell you that you can't do it anymore. Fu Ding, on the other hand, was different. He could use his own will to completely control his body. Even Fu Ding was quite surprised. Now, even the evil dominator had said that his sister had a very powerful physique. What did that mean? It didn't matter to him whether his sister could cultivate or not. Fu Ding only wanted his sister to be healthy. Although I don't know what kind of constitution it is, your sister's constitution is now being devoured by a mysterious method. As time goes on, your sister will completely disappear, and your sister's talent will be transferred to someone else. Li Zongjie said. Even with Li Zongjie's cultivation, he couldn't directly find the person behind this. This showed that either the other party's method was very advanced and hidden, or the other party's strength was many times stronger than Li Zongjie's. Li Zongjie wasn't clear about the specific reasons, but the general situation was like this. The other party had come prepared. How could this be? Senior, you have to save my sister. Fu Ding hurriedly said. As long as Senior can save my sister, Fu Ding is willing to pay any price. It's not about the price. Li Zongjie waved his hand. Suddenly his hand stopped moving. It was as if he had a new idea. If you want to say it like that, I have a way to try, but whether it works or not depends on you. Li Zongjie said. Please guide me, Senior. Fu Ding hurriedly said. If there was something in this world that even Li Zongjie couldn't do, then there weren't many people who could. It's very simple. You cultivate, and when your cultivation is strong enough, you can join forces with your sister to defeat the person who secretly stole your sister's talent. You can even backfire on him. Li Zongjie said. No one else could do this. Only Fu Ding himself could do it, because Fu Ding was connected to his sister by blood. They could form a kind of connection and trust between each other. Even in an unfamiliar environment, they were able to recognize each other. Wanting to save Fu Ding's sister was an extremely mysterious ideology. It was as if everyone's aura was drifting between heaven and earth. If you were strong enough, you could see these auras. Now, someone who was thousands of miles away had caught Fu Ding's sister's aura and began to devour it. That was why Fu Ding's sister fell into a coma. The appearance of such a thing was indeed quite rare. Even Li Zongjie had yet to reach such a level, where one's body would become one's consciousness, condensing one's own will. Recently, Li Zongjie had also been studying things in this area, so he had a slight understanding. The young Fu Ding had a strong will. Therefore, it would naturally be relatively easier to take this step. The most important thing was that Li Zongjie had mastered the method, so he definitely had to find a person to test it out. Whether it would succeed or not, it would depend on luck. Cultivate, but I don't know how to cultivate. In Fu Ding's heart, he also began to think about how to train himself. Since he could save his sister by training himself, of course, he had to train well. I should find a master. I want to be apprenticed. Fu Ding's eyes were burning with light. But where should I find a master? Li Zongjie looked at this brat who was talking to himself. He didn't know if this brat was doing it on purpose, or if he was faking it. This was too much, to think that he would use such a method to ignore this evil lord. Ahem! Li Zongjie deliberately coughed a few times to remind the kid in front of him. Fu Ding was not stupid. He immediately kowtowed to Li Zongjie. Evil lord, please accept me as your disciple. Chapter 1368. Li Zongjie did not make things difficult for Fu Ding. Since Fu Ding had such talent, he naturally needed to be nurtured well. Moreover, Fu Ding's success meant that Li Zongjie's choice was right. Such a conjecture could not be wrong. Li Zongjie asked someone to find a piece of Millennium Stone of Ice. Together with the pill refined by Li Zongjie, he directly embedded it in the stone. With the effect of the pill in his hand, it could at least maintain the vitality of Fu Ding's younger sister for at least 600 years. In this way, he could ensure that the speed of the other party's refinement would be reduced. At the same time, Li Zongjie did this on purpose. He directly froze the other party's consciousness. In this way, the other party's progress would be very slow. If he could not keep his cool, he would definitely immediately find someone to search for this body. At that time, Li Zongjie would also know who the other party was. If possible, it was not impossible to get rid of the enemy in advance. Next, it was up to fate to see what the other party chose. Of course, Li Zongjie also cultivated in this stream of consciousness. After all the preparations were done, at least Fu Ding's heart could be at ease. At least for the next 300 years, there would be no danger to his life. Therefore, he had 300 years to prepare. This caused Fu Ding to make up his mind to cultivate properly. After that, Li Zongjie also guided the other party's cultivation in the fallen city. About half a year later, on the battlefield against the fallen race, a rather legendary young man appeared. This young man held a black ruler in his hand. It looked like a small wooden stick, but it was this small black wooden stick that could easily kill the enemy. On the battlefield, it could easily kill the warriors of the fallen race. Once he started killing, it was difficult to stop. No matter how strong or powerful the opponent was, they were easily beheaded by this young man. Any fallen race warrior touched by the black ruler in the young man's hand would scatter in the sky like dust. They did not even have a chance to be injured. It was quite terrifying. It was said that this ruler was called the demon-suppressing ruler. No one knew his origin, but this powerful young man truly existed. He fought for the human race and forced the fallen clan into a forest. He had almost taken back the original territory of the human race. Now that the Beast Divine Hall had been dealt such a powerful blow, they had become rather restrained. Fu Ding held the evil suppression ruler and landed on a black mountain range. The mountain was covered in dust, but it was not dust formed by stones. Instead, these people of the fallen race were turned into ashes by the demon-suppressing ruler. They were all directly covered in a thick layer of ashes on the mountain peak. At the very least, they had killed 5 to 6 million people. The stream of consciousness fighting style taught by Master is indeed powerful. Fu Ding was also quite shocked in his heart. In fact, Fu Ding was also very surprised that he could produce such a powerful combat strength. The number of fallen race experts that he had killed before was not small at all. There were at least 10 Origin Emperor Realm experts. Many of them were members of the Assassination Palace. In this battle, most of the elite troops of the fallen race were wiped out. I'm not strong enough. I have to become stronger. Fu Ding had also used his own consciousness power to spar with Li Zongjie. However, in front of Li Zongjie's power, Fu Ding's power appeared to be very weak. In just half a year, Fu Ding's breakthrough was also very impressive. At least with the accumulation of various elixirs, Fu Ding's current strength had been raised to the Origin Emperor realm. However, Fu Ding wasn't satisfied, because his current strength wasn't enough to save his younger sister. After Fu Ding dealt with the people, at the foot of the mountain, a large group of cavalry wearing white armor rushed to the top of the mountain. They had charged all the way, but in fact the combat strength of this group of cavalry was also quite strong. However, they did not encounter any obstacles along the way, because all the enemies were killed by the young man on the mountain. Now that they had directly charged up, they found that the young man had already killed the fallen race. All of them had been killed. This battle is enough to weaken their vital points and weaken their strength. Jiang Bai came to the front of Fu Ding. Because of Fu Ding's appearance, the battle could be said to have advanced triumphantly along the way, and the fallen army was truly defeated. It was quite powerful. When Jiang Bai and the others found out that the young man was actually the disciple of Evil Lord, they were very surprised. At the same time, Fu Ding's strength also shocked Jiang Bai and the others once again. One person alone withstood thousands of troops and horses, and when Fu Ding fought, the momentum and state formed was quite mysterious. Now both Jiang Bai and Chu Yan were in the Origin Emperor realm, but in front of Fu Ding, they had no power to fight back. It was not just them. In front of Fu Ding, even some of the fallen race warriors in the Origin Emperor realm had no power to fight back. He could easily kill them one by one, and the way he fought was unprecedented. Almost no one could resist the attack of the latter. You guys pack up, I will continue to go deeper, Fu Ding said. Since he had succeeded in his cultivation, Li Zongjie directly sent Fu Ding to practice in actual combat, using this method to improve his strength. Therefore, before completing the task, Fu Ding was not even qualified to return to the fallen city to see Li Zongjiu. They have all been killed by you and are hiding in the 100,000 mountains, and you still want to chase after them? Jiang Bai was very worried about the latter's situation. If they continued to pursue, there was no telling what would happen. It should be known that the environment in the 100,000 mountains was not so simple. Even a long time ago, this place did not belong to their territory. It was the territory of the origin beasts. If anyone were to rashly barge in, it was hard to say whether they could survive, let alone defeat all these people. That kind of place was not suitable for the human race to fight. The environment was changeable, and the difficulty of fighting was quite high. Master told me that I must find the Beast God Hall's elders. Even now those people have yet to show themselves. After Fu Ding finished speaking, he leaped and disappeared directly from the mountain peak. At the same time, his figure suddenly turned into a rainbow light, following the trajectory above the sky, and instantly flew out. Boom! Jiang Bai and the others' eyes were full of shock. There was nothing to clean up at the scene. Not even a corpse was left, so these people did not even have a chance to be resurrected. There was no need to clean up. Chapter 1369. 100,000 Mountains. Beast God Mountain Range. The huge black tower covered the sky and the sun. At this moment, it was constantly inhaling and exhaling a terrifying aura around the great array. This tower had a total of 97,000 levels. Now they had only pulled out 60,000 levels of the Beast God Temple. Currently, there were still 30,000 levels left. Just moving a single layer would take several months. Therefore, this was an extremely long process. Dozens of elders attacked at the same time. Moreover, none of them could relax for even half a second. Otherwise, they would die. Otherwise, the tower that they had painstakingly pulled out would be sucked back in. Just as the numerous elders were trying their best to summon the Black Tower, a voice suddenly rang out. Suddenly, a ray of light surged from the top of the tower and instantly attached itself to the Black Tower. At the same time, it shook violently. Rumble! The eyes of the elders of the Beast God Temple suddenly revealed a look of horror. The Black Tower was quickly pulled out of the great array. It was as if a towering giant had used his hands to move the Black Tower out. Such a shocking scene was also quite shocking in their eyes. Then, the elders' faces suddenly revealed a look of surprise. It's the Deputy Hall Master. At this moment, the light that wrapped around the Black Tower gradually formed its original appearance. It turned out to be a huge black dragon. However, this huge dragon was different from what they imagined. It had a pair of wings on its back. Its appearance looked like a winged lizard. However, its body could be said to be incomparably huge, and it had a total of 2 heads. Boom! More than 20 elders worked together and spent several months to pull out one level. However, at this moment, under the display of this 2-headed demonic dragon, over 1,000 levels were pulled out in an instant. Rumble! There was no need to mention how shocked the elders were when they saw the Beast God Temple being uprooted by over 1,000 levels. Only the Vice Hall Master and the Hall Master could possess such strength. However, if it was the Hall Master who acted, it was obviously not at this level. Moreover, for the Hall Master to awaken, it was not something that could be done overnight. Only a few years had passed, so it must be the Deputy Hall Master who acted. The Deputy Hall Master has awakened. That's great. This way, the Beast God Temple will appear at least 1,000 years earlier. The elders were also pleasantly surprised. Originally, they would need at least 10,000 years to completely uproot the Beast God Temple. But now they no longer needed such a long time. Boom! When the figure of the 2-headed demonic dragon disappeared, the elders immediately felt the incomparably heavy pressure on their bodies. It was as if their bodies were going to be crushed directly. They finally heaved a sigh of relief, but in the blink of an eye, the pressure fell directly on them again. Therefore, it was a little difficult for him to get used to it. I'm going to find someone. The 3 of you come with me. The Deputy Palace Master directly selected 3 elders to accompany him. At the same time, The vice palace master waved his hand and stabilized the beast god temple. Boom! Immediately, the 3 selected elders followed behind the deputy hall master. Although the deputy hall master had already woken up, his main body was still in the beast god temple. Therefore, what followed him was only a strand of his will. The 3 chosen elders were all at the 5th level of the absolute saint realm. Among the elders, they were ranked in the middle. However, they were much more powerful than Wang Chuan and Gu He. In terms of strength, these 2 people were estimated to be 3rd level absolute saints. To be able to reach 5th level absolute saints was already an extremely terrifying existence. As the 3 elders and the deputy hall master disappeared, the remaining elders were puzzled among themselves. Obviously, they were all guessing why the deputy hall master had left. There aren't many opponents in the sacred martial realm. Why is the deputy hall master in such a hurry to find someone? The elder of the fallen tribe couldn't help but wonder. And he even mobilized people. It's obviously not simple. The deputy hall master's realm isn't something that we can touch. That's true. Now the deputy hall master's realm might be half a step into that realm. If the deputy hall master can truly enter that realm, perhaps we can return. An elder said. Although they were said to be plundering the resources and spiritual chi in the sacred martial realm, they were the invaders. They seemed to be the invaders, but in fact in their original world, there were also people who were robbing them. Therefore, the fallen tribe had no choice but to move to the sacred martial realm. The real enemy, an even more terrifying enemy, was still to come. This was also the reason why the people of the beast god temple hadn't moved yet to invade the human race's territory. It was because they were also being attacked in another place. Even if this matter were to be spread out, it was likely that not many people would dare to believe that there was actually a race that was even more powerful than the fallen race in front of them. Moreover, this race was able to force the already terrifying and incomparably powerful fallen race into such a state. If they knew about this, they would definitely be incomparably shocked. If Li Zongjiu knew about this, he wouldn't be so surprised. He would even think that this was a very normal thing. There would always be a higher mountain, and there would always be an endless mountain to climb. After killing an enemy, there would naturally be another stronger one. However, for Li Zongjiu, it was hard to tell who the real winner would be before the battle. Li Zongjiu in the fallen city. He had condensed his own will. Li Zongjiu had also formed his own will into a hammer. It looked very similar to the Black Dragon hammer. This is strange. Could it be that my will is a hammer? When Li Zongjiu transformed his will and observed himself, he was suddenly a little speechless. This was because Li Zongjiu really didn't expect such a situation to occur. He didn't expect it to end up like this. However, Li Zongjiu had no way to control this kind of thing. It seemed to be innate. At least Li Zongjiu could prove that the Black Dragon hammer was also powerful and mysterious, and even more powerful than the unparalleled sword. It could actually affect his will. After Fu Ding cultivated, Li Zongjiu also handed the demon-suppressing ruler to him, because he found that Fu Ding's own will was quite symmetrical with the demon-suppressing ruler. He handed the demon-suppressing ruler to Fu Ding, and made it Fu Ding's weapon. Looking at the latter's performance, it seemed to be very good. On this day Li Zongjiu, who was cultivating, suddenly frowned, because in the sky above the fallen city, a powerful will was condensed. Yin ran. Chapter 1370. Li Zongjiu looked at the sky. It seemed that at this moment, Qi Yanran's will had penetrated the whole world. Some people who were still wandering around the fallen city, after feeling this powerful will, most of them directly knelt on the ground, trembling. As Qi Yanran's will condensed, a huge five-colored phoenix gradually revealed its figure. The power of the phoenix soared into the sky, dyeing the whole sky with 5 colors. After Li Zongjiu saw Qi Yanran's strength, he sucked in a breath of cold air. This girl, I thought I could take the lead, but I didn't expect her to catch up so quickly. Li Zongjiu also did not expect that Qi Yanran's speed of improvement was much faster than he imagined. Otherwise, under such circumstances, it would not have taken her almost 2 years to break through. In this green bird platform, the power of inheritance was constantly condensing. Therefore, Qi Yinran's breakthrough was obviously much faster than Li Zongjiu's. However, the help of the Green Bird platform could only reach this level. Li Zongjiu could rely on his own talent to reach this level, which was quite difficult. If the two of them wanted to compete, then it would depend on each other's level. If the inheritance of the Green Bird platform was given to Li Zongjiu, it was believed that his strength would definitely break through to a more terrifying level. Unfortunately, the power that Li Zongjiu cultivated was not so symmetrical with the Green Bird platform. Therefore, it did not have much effect on Li Zongjiu. Qi Yinran's will penetrated the world. However, it did not last long before it gradually condensed into a figure, suspended in the air. Qi Yinran spent 2 years, and finally broke through her own limit. And this time, the breakthrough also directly absorbed all the power of the Green Bird platform. Zongjiu. When Qi Yinran saw Li Zongjiu, she could not wait to throw herself into Li Zongjiu's arms. For 2 years, Li Zongjiu was always by Qi Yinran's side, never leaving her side. Although Qi Yinran was cultivating, she could obviously feel Li Zongjiu's presence. For this, Qi Yinran was also quite moved. After not seeing each other for 2 years, the two of them were even more affectionate. The two of them did not need to say much. With our strength, we might be able to take back that teleportation array. Qi Yinran said softly. It's not that simple. Although you and I have already mastered the realm of will, there must be someone in the Beast Divine Temple who has also mastered the realm of will. Li Zongjiu said. If it wasn't for Fu Ling's appearance, Li Zongjiu wouldn't have been able to reach his current level in such a short amount of time and speed. This was because Li Zongjiu was certain that his thoughts were correct, and that his path was correct. Therefore, his progress was naturally much faster. However, before Li Zongjiu embarked on this path, more than half of this path had already been taken, so it was not necessarily an easy thing to defeat the other party. Our will may be able to create a transmission array. Qi Yinran said. That's doable. Li Zongjiu nodded. The strength of will lies in the fact that if you want to do something, you can do it. Unlike the will of mortals, this kind of will was the will of an absolute saint expert, which was close to the peak of existence. The will formed by this kind of power was naturally more terrifying and powerful. The two of them did not chat for long, and soon, the silence was broken by a powerful depraved force. Boom! A 9-headed serpent king, whose body was thousands of feet tall, directly fell into the fallen city, directly destroying the fallen city's defensive array and forcibly breaking in. There were still many treasure hunters in the fallen city, but when they suddenly saw such a huge monster, they were naturally scared out of their wits. The scene in front of them almost made them feel like they were going to explode on the spot. My God, what is that? The divine beast of the fallen clan. So strong, I feel like I'm going to suffocate. Some people were also shocked by this momentum, and they were stunned on the spot, forgetting to breathe. It was as if there was an invisible hand strangling their necks, and their chests were pressed by a huge stone, making them unable to move at all. Their bodies were stiff and trembling. Then, these treasure hunters in the fallen city saw 2 human figures appear. They were hovering in the air. This 9-headed black serpent was the body of an elder of the fallen clan. Originally, he was searching nearby, and when the deputy palace master brought him out to search for the aura of a human, he happened to be searching nearby. Then, he felt the aura of a powerful absolute saint expert in the fallen city, and thought that it was also an expert of the human clan. So he directly rushed over. At the very least, he had to get the other party to help him search for him. If not, he would interrogate the other party, and then eat the other party. That way, his body would be truly nourished. It had been a long time since he had eaten some supplements. Therefore, this 9-headed black serpent elder was a little impatient, and directly rushed down without saying anything. As for this array, it might be useful for ordinary people, but for a 5th-grade absolute saint like him, it was completely useless. Let me try. Li Zongjiu wanted to take down the 9-headed black serpent elder in front of him. After all, it was rare to see such an expert in such a long time, and he thought that it should be an elder of the fallen clan. But Qi Yinran took the initiative to speak first. She had just broken through, and she was also a little impatient to see what level she was at. Li Zhongjiu naturally did not care. Anyway, he was here, and there would not be any trouble, so he let Qi Yinran try her skills. Qi, the nine-headed black serpent elder, did not make any unnecessary movements, and directly launched an attack on the two. 3 of its 9 heads directly poked out, and directly rushed toward Qi Yinran and Li Zhongjiu. Qi Yinran rushed forward. As she flew, her body directly turned into a 5-colored flowing light. Boom! 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 In an instant, the 3 heads were directly blown up. Seeing this scene, Li Zhongjiu's face was filled with shock. This was a little bit powerful. The 9-headed black serpent elder did not expect Qi Yinran to be so fierce. However, Qi Yinran did not stop moving. The bluebird platform turned into a green light, turned into a pair of wings, and appeared behind Qi Yinran. Then Qi Yinran's figure's speed suddenly increased. Before the 9-headed black serpent elder made any movements, Qi Yinran had already circled around the 9-headed black serpent elder hundreds of times. Finally, with a swoosh, Qi Yinran's figure returned to Li Zhongjiu's side. The 9-headed black serpent elder in front of them was in a complete state a second ago. The next second, with a boom, it exploded into countless pieces, and flesh and blood fell from the sky, as if it was raining blood. After seeing this scene, the people in the fallen city fell into a state of shock. In the blink of an eye, this divine beast of the fallen clan was easily killed. Was it so terrifying? This divine beast of the fallen race simply did not have any face to speak of. Chapter 1371. Qi Yinran easily killed the giant beast. The other party was obviously an elder of the fallen race. Li Zhongjiu had no idea why he would come looking for him. However, it was obvious that the other party had yet to step into the realm of will. In fact, he had yet to even touch the threshold. Therefore, it was normal for him to be killed. Amazing! Your comprehension of will is stronger than mine. Li Zhongjiu could not help but praise her. Qi Yinran could not help but feel a little proud. But soon, their faces became dignified, and they looked at the horizon at the same time. The treasure hunters of the fallen city were completely unaware of the situation. After seeing the giant beast being killed, they all cheered. Obviously, in their opinion, this was something worth celebrating. After collecting the blood on the ground, they did not know how much they could sell it for. This was the real treasure. However, these people of the fallen city suddenly saw the 2 figures who had just killed the giant 9-headed snake. They suddenly soared into the sky, as if they had made a big discovery. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into the sky. At the same time, on the sacred mountain of the human clan, 5 figures in different places opened their eyes almost at the same time. Both of their eyes were filled with astonishment. How is it possible? This aura. Not good. The expert of the fallen clan has come out. How powerful! How could he wake up so quickly? Just when the 5 people were shocked, they heard a cave on the top of the sacred mountain suddenly explode, and then a figure flew out directly. When they saw this figure, they were shocked. Then, the 5 sage immortals all bowed respectfully to this person. Greetings, Heaven Saint! Greetings, Heaven Saint! The Heaven Saint was wearing a black robe with a 5-clawed black dragon, and there were thick eye bags under his eyes. It seemed that he had not slept for decades, and then he was helplessly woken up. He's finally here. The experts of the human race, who had been hiding under the sacred mountain, finally revealed their true identities. Not many people in the outside world knew about them, but these sage immortals knew very well that if it had not been for a heavenly saint, the human realm would have been destroyed long ago. How could these people still be able to breathe the fresh air freely? Apparently, the appearance of this aura had alarmed Lord Heavenly Saint, which was why he had personally appeared to investigate. Go! As soon as the Heavenly Saint finished speaking, he suddenly transformed into a giant bird with a wingspan of 30,000 miles. It also had a famous name in the human world, the Kuanpeng. Boom! Heavenly Saint Kuanpeng flapped his wings 3 times, and arrived above Fallen City. He flew forward, and turned back into his human form. Looking ahead, there were already 5 people facing off against each other. Li Zongjio turned around and glanced at the old man in black who had appeared behind him. In fact, after subduing Beikong and Donglai, Li Zongjio knew that there was a heavenly saint in the sacred mountain. Therefore, Li Zongjio was not surprised. Heavenly Saint Kuanpeng was also quite surprised. What was going on with this young man and young lady in front of him? However, the heavenly saint's attention was quickly attracted by the person opposite him. The person opposite him was emitting a black aura all over his body. He was like a black flame that was bobbing up and down. In front of this black figure, there were two figures guarding him. For dark green lights gradually appeared where the black shadow's eyes were. When he saw the four green lights, he was shocked. The corners of the heavenly Saint Kuanpeng's mouth curled up into a vicious smile. Beast God Temple, Deputy Hall Master, two-headed black demonic dragon. You are the one who wanted to stop the Beast God Temple back then. You two brats, hand over that body, and I can let you live for a while longer. The Deputy Hall Master said slowly. However, the heavenly Saint Kuanpeng looked at Li Zongjio and Donglai in confusion. According to the habits of these people, they would have killed Li Zongjio and Donglai long ago. Why would he have so much nonsense to say? He even wanted to spare his life. That was even more impossible. The only explanation was that Li Zongjio and Donglai's strength was enough to make them wary. That was why such a negotiation had taken place. The heavenly Saint Kuanpeng sized up Li Zongjio and Donglai. At first, he thought that they were only early-stage absolute saints. But after taking a closer look, he was shocked to find that they both had intent. And they were not weak. The heavenly Saint Kuanpeng was completely shocked. The two of you can actually comprehend intent. Although there were many experts in the sacred martial realm, only the heavenly Saint Kuanpeng had comprehended intent at his level. Therefore, only the heavenly Saint Kuanpeng could be called a heavenly saint. Fortunately, the heavenly Saint Kuanpeng's intent wasn't weak. He could barely fight with these people from the Beast God Palace. At least, they wouldn't dare to be so arrogant. Otherwise, the Beast God Palace would only need 1 or 2 days to take over the sacred martial realm. Almost no one could stop them. Let us go. Whether or not you'll be able to leave this place alive is still unknown. Li Zongjio said with disdain. He really thought that he was invincible. How dare he show off in front of Li Zongjio? The heavenly Saint Kuanpeng gasped when he heard Li Zongjio's words. This brat really dared to say that. Young man, this is the Deputy Hall Master of the Beast God Palace, the dual-headed black demonic dragon. He's extremely powerful. The heavenly Saint Kuanpeng finally saw two young men who could confidently comprehend intent. If he nurtured them carefully, they would definitely become top experts. In the future, even the Beast God Palace wouldn't be a problem. As long as they were given enough time to grow, it would be fine. Therefore, the most important thing now was to stay alive. Just as the two sides were talking, the 5 Saint Immortals had also quickly flown over from the sacred mountain. Evil Lord Li Zongjio? One of the sage immortals saw Li Zongjio. They couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. The others were obviously very surprised. They didn't expect to see the evil Lord Li Zongjio here. Although Li Zongjio was young, his cultivation base was terrifyingly strong. During this period of time, he had been doing very well. It could be said that he had made a name for himself. Even these Saint Immortals did not dare to offend him too much. Everyone minded their own business. Originally, he wanted to recruit Li Zongjio, but he found that Li Zongjio's strength was much stronger than he imagined. Even the leader of the Sky Demons fell in the hands of Li Zongjio. Therefore, even if they attacked, they might not be a match for Li Zongjio. Moreover, Li Zongjio didn't do anything to harm the human race. Instead, he was helping the human race against the fallen race. Therefore, the people of the sacred mountain didn't bother with him. The great Wu country king had already told the sage immortals of the sacred mountain what he saw and heard. Under the protection of the evil lord, no one dared to touch the great Wu dynasty and the great Yin dynasty. Naturally, this was the first time the heavenly Saint Kuanpeng heard of Li Zongjio's name. However, this name was still very famous. Everyone is here. Hee, looks like the human race is destined to fall today. The deputy palace master said slowly. Then he waved his hand. The 2 elders of the Beast God Palace beside him suddenly began to transform. Boom! Chapter 1372. The elders of the beast god temple immediately transformed into their true forms. Each of them was thousands of feet tall. Their auras were so imposing that they could swallow clouds and spit out fog. They stepped on mountains and rivers, and had the sky above their heads. The slightest movement could cause the sky to collapse and the earth to quake. "You guys go and block them," Heavenly Sage Kuanpeng said. The 5 human race saint immortals also released their aura without hesitation. Although his body couldn't reach tens of thousands of feet in size, his aura was like a mountain that was constantly climbing. Rumble! The 5 of them directly charged towards the 2 giant beasts. Even if it was just a casual collision, it directly caused a terrifying commotion. It was like a terrifying spiraling force that instantly swept across the surroundings. The heavens and earth were in chaos. Fortunately, this place was quite far away from Fallen City. Otherwise, just the movement of the battle here was enough to destroy Fallen City dozens of times. Those who were still in Fallen City, naturally, their fate was self-evident. Only death awaited them. In fact, these elders of the fallen tribe were no longer qualified for Li Zhongjiu and Heavenly Sage Kuanpeng to take action. Instead, they were more interested in the 2-headed black demonic dragon in front of them. "It's been 200 years since we last fought. Let me see how much you've recovered in these 200 years. Heavenly Sage Kuanpeng said heroically. His voice rumbled like thunder. In the next moment, Heavenly Sage Kuanpeng directly transformed into his will. The power of the Kuanpeng soared into the sky and rushed towards the 2-headed black demonic dragon in front of him. The deputy palace master of the beast god temple also released his will. At this level, one's body only needed to be lightly touched by the other party's will to completely shatter into pieces. Only one's will could resist another's will. Heavenly Sage Kuanpeng is indeed the strongest expert of the human race. Let's observe how they use their will. Li Zhongjiu said to Qi Yanran. Although he had mastered this kind of power, he naturally needed to learn from stronger experts if he wanted to really use it well. When you have the strength, it's normal to have your own pride. However, when facing some stronger seniors, you also need to learn humbly. After learning, you can continue to be arrogant. This way, you can ensure that you will be arrogant forever. Qi Yanran nodded, and the 2 of them were not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he carefully observed the battle between the Kuanpeng Tiansheng and the dual-headed black demonic dragon. The dragon and the Kuan were fighting fiercely in the sky, although the moves between them looked very simple. And when they collided with each other, they created an extremely terrifying commotion. Boom! The heavens and earth split apart. The reason why he acted earlier was to prevent the few peak experts of the sacred martial realm from being completely killed by others. Otherwise, she did not know how long it would take for the sacred martial realm to have such experts to protect it again. The battle between the 2-headed black demonic dragon and Kuanpeng was also coming to an end. No matter how Kuanpeng Heavenly Saint attacked, he could not hurt the 2-headed black demonic dragon. Suddenly, the 2 heads of the 2-headed black demonic dragon spewed out energy similar to dragon flames. The terrifying energy instantly engulfed Kuanpeng Heavenly Saint's body. Boom! A violent explosion resounded in the sky. Kuanpeng Heavenly Saint's body was instantly sent flying from the explosion. Seeing this, the few sacred immortals of the human clan quickly rushed toward Kuanpeng Heavenly Saint and caught him, protecting him. Lord Heavenly Saint! Kuanpeng Heavenly Saint's aura had dropped to the freezing point. The 2-headed black demonic dragon continued to rush toward Kuanpeng Heavenly Saint. Since this guy was already injured, they might as well attack and kill Kuanpeng Heavenly Saint. Otherwise, it would not be easy to settle the score with the loss of 3 elders today. It's over. This person's power is unstoppable. The sacred immortals clearly felt powerless under the 2-headed black demonic dragon's aura. They could not resist at all. Kuanpeng Heavenly Saint could be said to be their last hope. Now that Kuanpeng Heavenly Saint had been defeated, no one could resist the 2-headed black demonic dragon's attack. Boom! Qi Yanran transformed into a 5-colored phoenix with a pair of green wings, formed by the blue bird Taoist platform. With 2 pairs of wings on her back, Two terrifying forces blasted toward the two-headed black demonic dragon. Even the two-headed black demonic dragon had to dodge after sensing Qi Yinran's power. It immediately swung its tail violently. It blocked the power released by Qi Yinran, but its tail was directly blown off. Roar! The two-headed black demonic dragon let out a painful roar. Kuanping Heavenly Saint, who was severely injured, was pleasantly surprised when he saw this scene. As expected, these two young people are incredible. The sacred martial realm is saved. After Qi Yinran forced her opponent's body to retreat, she also hovered in the sky. The two-headed black demonic dragon could not help but retreat. Its body also reappeared, turning into a black-robed figure. Naturally, Qi Yinran also transformed into her original form. Looks like this is not your peak state. You can't take a hit. Li Zhongjio's voice came from the side. The human clan Sacred Immortals could not help but look at Li Zhongjio. It was Qi Yinran who attacked just now. They had seen Qi Yinran's strength and naturally admired her. If Qi Yinran had said something like this at this moment, they would not have thought much of it. However, Li Zhongjio had not even made a move, and yet she said that he was not strong enough. Wasn't that a little too arrogant? Could it be that Li Zhongjio's strength was even stronger? Under the Deputy Palace Master's black robe, there was still a faint green light shining. He seemed to be planning the situation in front of him. If he was really not strong enough, then he would retreat first, and then make plans later. At the same time, he did not answer Li Zhongjio's question. Immediately, the Deputy Palace Master's body swayed. He wanted to escape into the distance. Trying to run, Li Zhongjio raised his hand slightly. The originally clear sky instantly turned dark. At the same time, a dense lightning net appeared in the sky, as if it had directly become a huge lightning ball between heaven and earth. At this moment, they were also in this lightning ball world. What this power? Extreme horror appeared in Heavenly Saint Kuanping's eyes. This kind of shock was simply indescribable. Heavenly Saint Kuanping had never seen such a terrifying power. Changing the sky and the sun. How terrifying. The two-headed black demonic dragon, the Deputy Palace Master, was naturally trapped in this lightning world and could not escape. He even stopped in time. Otherwise, if he was directly electrocuted, the consequences would be very serious. When did I say that you can leave? Li Zhongjio said indifferently. Chapter 1373. Since when did I say that you could leave? Such an arrogant, domineering, and arrogant attitude. Moreover, Li Zhongjio's words didn't seem like he was bluffing at all, nor did it seem like he had other intentions. Instead, it seemed like he was seriously elaborating. I didn't say that you could leave. Then you can't leave. Do you think that you can stop me? The Deputy Palace Master couldn't help but sneer. Did they really think that they could keep him here, just because they took advantage of him? They were too arrogant, so arrogant that they were a little ignorant. Stop you? No, I'm going to kill you. As Li Zhongjio's voice fell, the surging thunderbolts around him suddenly tightened and quickly retracted. During this process, one could see that Li Zhongjio's aura was rapidly rising. At the same time, Li Zhongjio directly leaped. His body merged with the thunderbolts, directly displaying his own terrifying state. Li Zhongjio's own will also burst out at this moment. It was a black hammer. The hammer was covered with the power of thunderbolts, densely packed like tattoos. When it appeared, the double-headed black demonic dragon's eyes finally lost its arrogance, and finally revealed a trace of shock. Obviously, Li Zhongjio was releasing a powerful force at this moment. Even the double-headed black demonic dragon couldn't help but be surprised. However, it was obviously not the time to be surprised. The double-headed black demonic dragon also shook its body and transformed into its original form. Moreover, when it released its original form this time, its aura was even stronger than before. Obviously, the double-headed black demonic dragon had hidden part of its strength just now. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so easily injured by Qi Yinran. Originally, it didn't want to display its full strength, because that would mean that it would need more time to restore its strength to its peak and reaccumulate this power. Therefore, the double-headed black demonic dragon wanted to leave first. However, it didn't expect Li Zongjio to be so powerful, and his own strength to be so strong. At this moment, the power that the double-headed black demonic dragon erupted was 10 times more than before. When the power in his body surged, Li Zongjio also transformed into a black hammer, smashing down viciously. In an instant, it struck one of the double-headed black demonic dragon's heads. Boom! One of the twin-headed black demonic dragon's heads instantly exploded. At the same time as the explosion, the other head also spat out a terrifying destructive dragon breath at Li Zongjio. Boom! Li Zongjio's hammer of will had also gathered its power under his opponent's dragon breath. However, he did not have the chance to break free. If the other party continued, Li Zongjio would also be injured. At this moment, Qi Yinran, who had transformed into a 5-colored phoenix, immediately descended. A claw came down and directly clawed out one of the black dragon's eyes. Immediately, the dual-headed black demonic dragon's remaining head rushed towards the sky and began to inhale and exhale dragon breath energy. Li Zongjio broke free and continued to summon thunderbolts. They wrapped around the double-headed black demonic dragon's huge body and continuously released the power of thunder and lightning. The latter's body was directly smashed by the power of thunder and lightning. The double-headed black demonic dragon's huge body suddenly exploded in the sky. Boom! The remaining head was also directly smashed by Qi Yinran's wings. It was as easy as smashing a watermelon. The double-headed black demonic dragon's power disappeared. Li Zongjio and Qi Yinran both returned to their original forms. However, they were not too happy about it because they found out that this guy was just a clone. It's just a clone, but it's already so powerful. Li Zongjio was slightly surprised. However, even the clone of the other party was destroyed. He did not see any reaction from the other party's main body, which meant that the other party's main body was probably in some kind of trouble. Li Zongjio also wanted to fight with the other party's main body. He waved his hand and dispersed the thunderbolts in the sky. The eyes of these human race saint immortals were also filled with extreme shock. Li Zongjio killed the double-headed black demonic dragon so easily? They did not expect Li Zongjio and Qi Yinran to kill the double-headed black demonic dragon, the deputy temple master of the beast god temple, so easily. Didn't this mean that if they could kill the temple master of the beast god temple as well, they would be able to completely destroy the fallen clan? The deputy temple master is dead? As expected of the evil lord, we were too short-sighted in the past. Thank you, Lord Evil Lord, for helping us. One of the older saint immortals said respectfully to Li Zongjio. At the beginning, this person had said that he wanted to befriend Li Zongjio and not become enemies with him. However, there were many voices of opposition at that time, so the matter was left unsettled. However, these people had no choice but to accept Li Zongjio's powerful strength. Li Zongjio and Qi Yinran did something that even Heavenly Sage Kunpeng could not do. This showed how powerful the two of them were. Don't be happy too early. What we just destroyed was only a clone of the other party, Li Zongjio said indifferently. Since this old fellow was so polite, Li Zongjio would naturally reply. If he was as arrogant as Bei Kong and Dong Lai, Li Zongjio would naturally let them have a good taste of this boundless hell. Sure enough, it was only a clone. I didn't expect these people to become so strong after 200 years. Heavenly Sage Kunpeng sighed. 200 years ago, Heavenly Sage Kunpeng had also fought with the other party and severely injured him. Later on, both of them were injured. They both recovered. In fact, the double-headed black demonic dragon was not at its peak state at that time. It was only severely injured. That was why Heavenly Sage Kunpeng was able to take advantage of it. Now that he had recovered a lot of his strength, he was naturally more powerful and terrifying than Heavenly Sage Kunpeng. However, they did not expect that Heavenly Sage Kunpeng could not even defeat the clone of the double-headed black demonic dragon after 200 years. It's only a clone. The saint immortals of the human clan were shocked and looked at each other. If the other party's true body was here, how terrifying would it be? They did not dare to imagine what the consequences would be. However, since the other party was so powerful, Why was he not attacking and conquering the sacred martial realm? There's nothing to worry about. Even if his true body is here, he won't be that strong, Li Zongjio said indifferently. If the other party's true body was here, Li Zongjio would be very interested to continue fighting with him. The two of you, please come to the sacred mountain for a chat, so that we can express our gratitude. Thank you for saving the sacred martial realm today. Heavenly Sage Kuan-peng seemed to have made up his mind and personally invited Li Zongjio and Qi Yinran to the sacred mountain. Chapter 1374. Li Zongjio wasn't interested in the sacred mountain at all. He rejected them on the spot. I'm not free now. Please go ahead. Li Zongjio didn't invite them to sit down and have a good chat. Usually, these absolute saints would feel lonely at the top. Therefore, it was normal for them to group up and get to know each other. However, Li Zongjio didn't care about these things. He didn't care about cultivation realm. These human race sage immortals couldn't believe that Li Zongjio and Heavenly Saint Kuan-peng had rejected him directly. This was the strongest expert of the human race. No. Before Li Zongjio and Qi Yinran made a move, that was the case. Now the position of the strongest expert would be given to Li Zongjio and Qi Yinran. Perhaps Heavenly Saint Kuan-peng would drop to the third place. However, these sage immortals didn't realize it yet. They were still stuck in the era of Heavenly Saint Kuan-peng. In that case, I won't force you. If you're willing, you can come to the sacred mountain as a guest anytime. Heavenly Saint Kuan-peng said. There was no hatred or conflict between them. Moreover, Li Zongjio and Qi Yinran were so strong now. He had to make friends with them. He couldn't afford to offend them. Otherwise, he wouldn't have a good life. However, where did these two powerful young men come from? It was too terrifying. He didn't expect such experts to be born in just 200 years. Heavenly Saint Kuan-peng naturally didn't know that Li Zongjio and Qi Yinran's cultivation time was much shorter than he had imagined. Also, you guys are really exaggerating. He really dares to call himself the heavenly sage of the holy celestial immortal. Li Zongjio said. Li Zongjio had wanted to talk about these people for a long time, but he didn't have the chance to do so. Now that the chance had come, these people were gathered together. Therefore, Li Zongjio didn't hold back. Immediately, these people felt ashamed and unable to show their faces. If someone else dared to say that to them, they would have been slapped to death on the spot. However, since Li Zongjio said that to them, they had no choice but to laugh and nod. After all, the strength of Li Zongjio and Qi Yinran was already comparable to the peak of the realm. In the future, the matters of the Beast God Temple would even require the two of them to take action. Moreover, if Li Zongjio wanted to destroy the sacred mountain, it wouldn't be impossible. It was no wonder that Beikong and Donglai were willing to work for Li Zongjio ever since they came to Li Zongjio's place. Originally, they thought that this situation was quite unbelievable, but now it seemed to be a very normal thing. It was an opportunity that he couldn't even ask for. These two guys were really too evil. After teaching these opinionated old men a lesson, Li Zongjio and Qi Yinran returned to the fallen city. The other party appeared in such a hurry that he hadn't even recovered his strength. He anxiously sent an avatar here, so it must be for Fu Ling. She was Fu Ding's younger sister. In this regard, Li Zongjio naturally had to take good care of Fu Ling. However, it was definitely inconvenient to leave her here. Just a random elder could easily destroy the defense of the fallen city. Wasn't this already a bit too much? Therefore, Li Zongjio also needed to bring her to a safer place. Now that he knew the other party's origin and strength, Li Zongjio had a rough estimate in his heart. Therefore, Li Zongjio directly put Fu Ling into his hell world. Li Zongjio and Qi Yinran agreed to take a stroll in the sacred martial realm. At least, they wanted to take a look at the scenery here. Although there were mountains and rivers everywhere, they were all similar things. However, since they were already here, they naturally wanted to take a look. Otherwise, it would be too wasteful. At the same time, they also needed to study the transmission array. Returning to the sacred martial continent was the most important thing. Now that his cultivation had broken through to such a level, if he wanted to advance to the next level, it would not be a simple matter of cultivation. He would also need various kinds of opportunities, and it would not be effective in a short period of time. Immediately, Li Zongjio and Qi Yanran left the fallen city and headed towards the Great Yin dynasty. Today, the Great Yin was also thriving under the governance of Chu Yinguan. It was originally the territory of the Great Wu. However, now that it was taken over by Chu Yinguan, of course it needed to be polished. The most important thing was to train everyone into warriors. In a chaotic world, only the strong could protect themselves. This was a principle that had been inconvenient since ancient times. Chu Yinguan had survived in a chaotic world and experienced countless ups and downs, so he was more aware of this principle. The current capital of the Great Yin was called Jinchang City. Chu Yinguan was here. As the center of power, he had jurisdiction over 16 subordinate cities. These 16 cities were the main top-level cities. In addition, there were some smaller villages and towns that were actually under the jurisdiction of the Great Yin. Li Zongjio and Qi Yanran came to Jinchang City. It was worthy of the sacred martial realm's construction technology. Even after thousands of years, the sacred martial continent had not reached the level of these cities in the sacred martial realm. The Jinchang City in front of them seemed to be built on top of an upside-down pyramid that towered into the clouds. The bottom of the city looked like an inverted triangular pyramid. There were fixed bridges and ladders connecting the four sides. There were also lifts for vehicles, metabeasts, and other large objects to pass through. If these ladders were put away, it would basically be a perfect sky fortress. Under such circumstances, it could easily attack the people below, and it would be difficult for the people below to have the opportunity to climb up the hundreds of meters high city wall. Moreover, no matter what kind of mountain torrents or tsunamis, they would not be able to spread to Jinchang City. They even used an extremely special method of drainage to make the water flow directly to Jinchang City. Then it flowed down from another direction, forming a waterfall. The construction of this kind of city is probably more difficult than the construction of the floating sky city. Qi Yanran could not help but say after seeing it. Her eyes were also filled with incomparable surprise. Even Qi Yanran and Li Zongjio might not be able to understand the construction of some things. After all, although one was powerful, it did not mean that one knew everything. Therefore, it was normal that some things were not known. After all, different specializations were different. For example, how did the water flow at the bottom of the city reverse to a height of hundreds of meters? This made Li Zongjio very curious. The state of the sacred martial realm was indeed much more advanced than that of the sacred martial continent. When the time comes, I'll have to take a copy of the design of Jinchang City and give it to Nangong Wuji when I return. Let him study and come up with one. Li Zongjio estimated. Then you might as well bring a team of architects back. Otherwise, Nangong Wuji's head, which doesn't have much hair to begin with, might continue to fall out. Qi Yanran joked. You're right. It's not impossible. While the two of them were talking, they were also standing on a lift. The lift was extremely fast and stable. It could accommodate at least 1,000 people at a time, and was teleported to the main gate of Jinchang City. In Jinchang City, there was no need to verify one's identity or register. Firstly, there was no need to do so. After all, it was very normal for such things to be faked. However, if you stayed in the city, you would have temporary identity information. For example, if you stayed in a certain inn or restaurant, your specific information, such as your height and appearance, would be recorded. Then, all the information would be backed up to the registration office where the restaurant was located. The registration office would report the information one by one. If something happened, they would be able to gather the information quickly. If you bought a house directly, it would be the same, unless you slept on the streets. However, Jinchang City did not allow people to sleep on the streets. It would greatly affect one's image. As long as you had hands and feet, and your intelligence reached 8 years old, the people in charge of the People's Livelihood Office in the city would bring you to work. The money you earned would be enough to maintain your food and clothing. There would even be subsidies. This subsidy model was also implemented after Chu Yinguan came to power, and it hadn't been implemented before. Therefore, after Li Zongjiu and Qi Yanran entered the city, they did not encounter any difficulties. It would no longer be the same as before, where he would often be stopped at the entrance of the city, and then he would have to go on a killing spree. After killing a few people, he would be allowed to enter. However, what would come would eventually come. The Jinchang guards of Jinchang City were patrolling ahead. In order to ensure the security of Jinchang City, in the past year, many outstanding people had been promoted. For example, the current captain of the Jinchang Guard's 1st Battalion, 6th Squad, Yin Kuan. He was just a coolie in Jinchang City. However, when he found out that he had made progress in his cultivation, he was directly recruited into the Jinchang Guards. Moreover, he had made many contributions and was promoted to captain. Now when people saw him, who would not respectfully address him as young Master Yin? Chapter 1375. Yin Kuan's career had been on the rise recently. Since the new king took office, people like him were directly put in important positions. He was ruthless and extremely strict. No matter how great one's reputation was, it was useless. As long as one did not obey the rules, all of them were directly arrested. If one dared to make trouble in the city, all of them would be arrested. Not a single chance would be given. It was such an iron-blooded and ruthless way of doing things. It could be said that the latter was now in an important position. At the same time, young Master Yin had been a little arrogant recently. He had used tricks and abused his power, and it was unknown how many good girls had fallen in love with him. This also made Yin Kuan taste the sweetness. Now was the time to appreciate the benefits brought by power. How could he let go of such a good thing? Young Master Yin? At this moment, Yin Kuan's men also saw Qi Yanran and Li Zongjiu walking towards them. Naturally, Li Zongjiu was directly ignored. However, Qi Yanran's devastatingly beautiful appearance attracted people's attention at first glance, and it was the kind that could never be forgotten. How could a person like Yin Kuan let go of such a peerless beauty? Therefore, when Yin Kuan saw Qi Yanran for the first time, he was completely stunned and directly froze on the spot. If there was anyone in this world who could be compared to this woman, perhaps only the current monarch of the great Yin could compare to her. No, if one were to take a closer look, it seemed that even if the monarch were here, he would not be able to match her temperament. With just one glance, Yin Kuan had already recognized the person in front of him in his heart. Such a beauty and himself were simply a match made in heaven. Immediately, Yin Kuan also hurriedly tidied up his clothes, and then walked towards Qi Yanran with his men. When happiness came, one must grasp it directly. Otherwise, it would be easy to lose it directly. For anyone, this was naturally a very painful thing. Li Zongjiu and Qi Yanran were shopping. Suddenly, they saw these armored soldiers coming up and surrounding them. Li Zongjiu glanced at Qi Yanran beside him. She was indeed a femme fatale. No matter where she went, she would always bring some surprises and accidents. However, this kind of surprise was not something that everyone could bear. Moreover, this femme fatale might not necessarily fall on Li Zongjiu. Is there anything I can help you with? Li Zongjiu asked. Originally, he was minding his own business and picking the things on the stall. However, the stall owner seemed to be frightened. He quickly took out some primordial stones from his money pouch and hurriedly handed them over to Yin Kuan. Young Master Yin, I'm sorry. Yin Kuan glanced at the stall owner. If it was any other time, he would have taken the money directly. However, Yin Kuan's purpose for coming here today was not for this little bit of silver. What do you mean? Are you trying to bribe me? Yin Kuan immediately glared at the stall owner in an extremely displeased manner. The stall owner himself was immediately stunned. In the next moment, Yin Kuan's subordinates rushed up and pinned the stall owner to the ground. Yin Kuan casually picked up an item. This item happened to be something that Li Zongjiu had his eyes on. After the latter picked it up, he casually threw it on the ground. This thing of yours did not pass the quality inspection. It's a third-rate product. It's illegal to sell it privately. After saying that, Yin Kuan directly stepped on it. This was a very delicate hand-assembled toy. However, now it shattered into pieces with a snap. The stall owner's face was filled with horror. "Sir, I already know how to make handicrafts. There's no need for the inspection. Furthermore, I paid the stall fee." The stall owner suddenly cried out. "Oh, so you mean that I, Yin Kuan, have wronged you? Or that I, Yin Kuan, am deliberately targeting you and abusing my power?" Yin Kuan's face suddenly seemed to be covered in frost as he squatted in front of the stall owner and asked, I wouldn't dare. "Sir, this is just a small business," the stall owner cried out. It was obvious that the other party was here to cause trouble. What could they do? Naturally, they could only resign themselves to it. Moreover, people like them could only obediently be fish on the chopping block. Otherwise, what else could they do? There was no justice when there was only power. Li Zongjio picked up the toy on the ground. When Li Zongjio looked at this thing just now, it was very interesting. This was because this thing in his hand was easily stacked together, without any glue or anything like that. Moreover, it was very sturdy. It was very difficult to take it apart. It was just a few parts, but it could not be pieced together into a sphere. "Boss, what's this thing called?" Li Zongjio picked up the object. The stall owner, who was pressed on the ground, never thought that at this time he might be locked up in the dungeon today. Why would he ask such a question at this time? However, the stall owner also seemed to have gotten a little carried away. He actually answered Li Zongjio for the first time. "This is called Luban Lock. It's a secret skill." "Interesting. How much is it?" Li Zongjio didn't seem to care about the people around him at all. He directly ignored Yen Kuan and the others. The stall owner did not expect that Li Zongjio would dare to buy things under such circumstances. He was really bold and fearless. Moreover, looking at Li Zongjio's behavior, it seemed that he was deliberately provoking Yen Kuan. Interesting. I have already said that this is an extraordinary product. It's prohibited to buy and sell. The seller is guilty. You are also guilty if you buy it. Take him down." Yen Kuan immediately ordered. The people behind him suddenly rushed out and were about to seize Li Zongjio. There were even several people who put their hands on Li Zongjio's body. Qi Yanran immediately snorted coldly. Li Zongjio raised his hand to signal Qi Yanran not to be angry. "Young man, if you kneel down and admit your mistake now, I can consider letting you live for a while," Li Zongjio said lightly. Several people who put their hands on Li Zongjio wanted to press Li Zongjio to the ground. However, they found that Li Zongjio's body was like a mountain. No matter how hard they tried, they could not move. Someone directly hit Li Zongjio's head with a short stick in his hand. However, he felt that there was nothing in front of him. He did not know why the stick in his hand hit his companion next to him. Bang! "Idiot, why did you hit me?" Sorry. The person quickly apologized. However, when the stick hit him, he felt that there was no problem at first. Later, he suddenly blacked out, and the person who was hit directly fell to the ground. When Qi Yanran saw this scene, the corners of her mouth inadvertently curled up. Although Li Zongjio's current strength could be said to be above all beings, there was no one in the world who could defeat him. There was no one who could match him in the sacred martial realm, but his stubborn attitude had never changed. Even before he made a breakthrough in his strength, he would still behave like this. It had nothing to do with one's strength. It was clearly a matter of one's personality. The people today were obviously the kind of people who did all sorts of evil deeds. Not to mention bullying others, this was a matter of fact. Moreover, no one knew what they were doing behind the scenes. Anyway, they were not good people. Since they were useless to this world, it was fine to kill them directly. When Yen Kuan saw this scene, he naturally did not believe that this was really a fight between his own people. It was obviously Li Zongjio who was causing trouble. "Kid, how dare you attack the Jinchang guards?" Yen Kuan directly pulled out the chopper at his waist. Suddenly, cold light overflowed. "What? Do you have the right to kill people on the street?" Li Zongjio said. Hearing the latter's words, Yen Kuan could not help but smile. It turned out that this kid was sure that he could not do anything to him on the street. He was really young, although the Jinchang guards did not have any judicial power. However, if they encountered some stubborn and dangerous people who resisted with all their might and accidentally killed them during the capture, it was excusable. It wasn't a big deal. You have to know that in the process of arresting suspects, there are often some accidents that happen. Pull out his hand, Yan Kuan shouted. Then, without needing the people around him to do anything, Li Zongjio directly stretched out his hand as if to say, "Do whatever you want." Seeing Li Zongjio being so arrogant, Yan Kuan did not hesitate. Of course, Yan Kuan would not let him go. At the same time, he used all the yuan power in his body to slash down. It was enough to easily cut off Li Zongjio's arm, who knew that when the knife in his hand landed on Li Zongjio's body, he heard a bang. The front half of the knife was directly broken. Then it was reflected back. Chi! The blade directly pierced into the latter's arm. Yan Kuan saw the injury on his body and immediately screamed. Ah! The latter covered his wound. The broken blade directly penetrated his arm and shoulder. It was stuck in his body just like that. Sir! Seeing Yan Kuan's appearance, his subordinates were shocked. They quickly went forward and held the blade without caring about the sharpness. Don't pull it out. But it was too late. The latter immediately pulled out the blade from the ground. Suddenly, blood gushed out like a small fountain. Ah! Yan Kuan screamed in pain. A few of his subordinates immediately rushed forward to help Yan Kuan stop the bleeding. Call for help, call for help. Don't let him escape. Chapter 1376. Yan Kuan did not know what was so special about Li Zongjio, but he knew that there must be something strange about him. Otherwise, with Yan Kuan's strength, how could he not be able to deal with someone younger than him? His subordinate immediately released the signal in a hurry. Chi Yan ran, who was at the side, also helped the stall owner up from the ground. The stall owner naturally thanked them. He didn't expect the scene to turn out like this. The latter was just a craftsman, so there was no need to create such a scene. He had never seen such a scene before. However, since things had already turned out like this, there was no difference to him. He could only watch quietly. However, he reckoned that he would not be able to continue selling these things. After the signal flare was released, a large number of Jinchang guards quickly approached Jinchang City. The Jinchang guards who were closest to Yan Kuan were also eager to perform meritorious deeds. Therefore, they stared at the situation in the city like wolves and tigers. If there was really no situation, they would deliberately create a situation. At the very least, they wanted to perform well. As for these fake things, of course, they would come back in the future. Suddenly, thousands of Jinchang guards rushed out from the surrounding streets. Audacious madman! How dare you commit murder on the streets? When the captain of the Jinchang Guard's 1st Battalion rushed over, he saw Yan Kuan kneeling on the ground and vomiting blood. Li Zongjio didn't expect that he would cause such a huge commotion every time he wanted to. It did feel like it was destined. However, he had seen all kinds of situations before. So why would he care about such a small scene? He could wipe out all the people in front of him with a flick of his finger. However, that would be too cruel, and not in line with Li Zongjio's style. It seems like you have the highest official position here? Li Zongjio looked at the middle-aged man, who was walking towards him with a majestic aura. This person was the captain of the Jinchang Guard's 1st Battalion, Chen Xiong. Yes, I am the captain of the Jinchang Guard's 1st Battalion, Chen Xiong. Chen Xiong said proudly. The Jinchang Guards had a total of 7 teams. In other words, there were only 6 people in the city who were on equal footing with Chen Xiong. Moreover, he controlled a large number of Jinchang Guards. He couldn't cover the sky with one hand, but it wasn't difficult to cover the sky of the land under his jurisdiction. That's fine. This person is committing murder on the street. Hurry up and arrest him. Li Zongjio pointed at the injured Yan Kuan. Yan Kuan couldn't believe that Li Zongjio would say such shameless words. Moreover, he said it so forcefully, as if it was very reasonable. Right now, you're standing there completely unharmed, while I'm the one who's been slashed by a knife. How dare you accuse me of committing murder on the streets? There was no justice in this world. Yan Kuan thought that he was a person who was better at finding trouble. However, Li Zongjio's ability to find reasons to deny it simply made Yan Kuan concede defeat. Do you think that I Chen Xiong am blind? If he committed murder on the streets, Why is he the one who's injured while you're standing here unharmed? That's because the quality of his knife is too poor. So he accidentally cut himself. Li Zhongjie spread his hands helplessly. This reason really made people speechless. He was really good at finding excuses. Chen Xiong heard this and sneered. Well, since you said that the quality of my Jinchang guard's knives is poor, then I'd like to see if the same thing will happen to me. Immediately, Chen Xiong drew his knife and slashed towards Li Zhongjie's head. In his territory, he naturally had the final say. Killing a few people was not a big deal. Yin Kuan was his subordinate. Moreover, Yin Kuan's recent performance had been good. He was a young man with a lot of potential. If he was properly groomed, he would definitely achieve something. Perhaps he would be of greater use to Chen Xiong in the future. Of course, he had to protect such a useful subordinate well. Moreover, Li Zhongjie's actions could be said to be a provocation to the Jinchang guards. In order to ensure the prestige of the Jinchang guards, Chen Xiong would definitely not let Li Zhongjie leave safely today. With this slash, everything would be resolved. However, with Chen Xiong's strength, after the slash, he also heard a cracking sound. Then, he watched helplessly as the saber in his hand broke. Moreover, the edge of the saber accurately chopped at his shoulder. Chi! Ah! Chen Xiong immediately screamed in pain. At this moment, the armor on his body was like a pile of tofu. Therefore, the blade easily cut his shoulder. Moreover, it was quite painful when the saber fell down. This caused the latter to scream uncontrollably. After seeing that Chen Xiong had been slashed, someone immediately rushed forward and grabbed the blade regardless of the danger. Don't pull it out. Chen Xiong realized something and quickly shouted. However, it was still too late. Whoosh! The knife was pulled out. Then, as if a water pipe was inserted into Chen Xiong's shoulder, blood spurted out directly and splattered all over the surroundings. My shoulder! Quick, stop the bleeding! However, the blood could not be stopped. If this continued, Chen Xiong's shoulder would definitely be completely destroyed. At this moment, Yin Kuan looked at the person who pulled the knife out twice. It was actually the same person. You are the traitor. Because Yin Kuan had been bleeding nonstop, his face was extremely pale. If it were not for the support of his strong Yuan force, which allowed his body to continuously produce blood, he would have already become a dried-up person. However, if this continued, he would not be able to hold on for too long. Chapter 1377. Although General Jiang Bai was still young, the things he had done were worthy of being passed down through the ages. Moreover, in the Great Yin Kingdom, he definitely held the power of life and death. No matter how powerful a person was in the Great Yin Kingdom, Jiang Bai still had the right to cut off his head with a sword. This was because Jiang Bai and Chu Yin Guan were said to have been chosen by the legendary person. Otherwise, Jiang Bai and Chu Yin Guan wouldn't have had such achievements at such a young age. Although the two of them were very outstanding, they still needed someone to control them from behind the scenes. Who would have thought that Jiang Bai would coincidentally return to the city today? Furthermore, he had made such a big joke out of himself in the middle of the street. Chen Xiong was also very nervous. If General Jiang Bai blamed him, it would be troublesome. However, Chen Xiong was also very clear in his heart. This Li Zhongjie was doomed. When he saw the general, he was not willing to kneel down and salute. Just this point alone was enough to cause a crime of disrespect. After General Jiang Bai dismounted, he quickly walked over. Chen Xiong was also quite excited in his heart. At the same time, he was also extremely nervous. Could it be that General Jiang Bai was going to help him up? If he could be praised by General Jiang Bai, then he would be extremely happy. Just when Chen Xiong was feeling nervous, Jiang Bai finally walked in front of him. General, Chen Xiongdo raised his head. Although he was injured, the corner of his mouth was brimming with a smile. Just as he was about to say that his injuries were not serious, he saw Jiang Bai unsheath the sword at his waist. With a swoosh, a white light flashed in front of his eyes. Then, the expression on Chen Xiong's face suddenly stiffened. In the next moment, Chen Xiong felt that his head was floating, as if he was drunk. Sure enough, with a bang, Chen Xiong's head directly fell to the ground. Jiang Bai's sword was as fast as the aurora. Even after Chen Xiong's head fell to the ground, he could still clearly see that General Jiang Bai was kneeling down in front of Li Zongjiu and Qi Yanran. What the hell? Chen Xiong didn't have the time to think about the whole story. In the next moment, Chen Xiong's eyes were already stiff and completely lifeless. Greetings to Senior Evil Lord. Jiang Bai hurriedly knelt before Li Zongjiu. Fortunately, he had arrived in time. Otherwise, if he had allowed these people to offend Evil Lord, who knew what would have happened? The White Bone army behind Jiang Bai also knelt down in unison. Although they did not know the background of Li Zongjiu and Qi Yanran in front of them, even their general had directly knelt down. What else could they say? Of course, they had to do as they were told. You can't expect the general to be kneeling on the ground while you're standing. That's how strict military discipline is. Get up. Li Zongjiu glanced at Jiang Bai. They hadn't seen each other for more than a year. Jiang Bai's murderous aura had become stronger and stronger. Obviously, during this period of time, he had killed a lot of fallen people. However, after sending Fu Ding out, Jiang Bai should have known that there was always someone better than him. He believed that Jiang Bai also knew what he should do. At this moment, Yan Kuan, who was kneeling on the ground and was about to faint, suddenly widened his eyes and mouth in surprise after hearing Jiang Bai's words. What did he just hear? Senior Evil Lord? The person in front of him turned out to be the legendary Evil Lord. Evil Lord? Fuck, what's going on? I actually wanted to kill the evil dominator with one slash. The latter felt dizzy just thinking about it. Yan Kuan couldn't believe his eyes and ears. Was it because he was bleeding too much that such an illusion appeared? No. He looked at Chen Xiong's head not far away. Yan Kuan obviously knew that he was finished. He was completely finished. Just now, this little brother said that I hurt people on the street. It's up to you, Li Zongjiu said and then glanced at Yan Kuan, who was lying on the ground like a dead dog. When Yan Kuan heard Li Zongjiu's words, his heart had already turned cold. Since he had already said so, there was no way to turn back. Just wait for death. Catch this person and let him die by 1,000 cuts on the street, Jiang Bai ordered. Several White Bone army soldiers stepped forward and picked Yan Kuan up, as if he was a chicken. No. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. Yan Kuan didn't know where he got the strength to break free from these people. The White Bone army soldiers directly punched Yan Kuan's stomach, making the latter immediately obedient and obediently hang in the hands of the White Bone army soldiers, no longer moving. Of course, one could imagine what would happen to him after he was taken away. Li Zongjiu naturally didn't care about how Yan Kuan died or how he died. Li Zongjiu wouldn't be happy because of this matter. He wasn't a pervert. Moreover, Li Zongjiu wouldn't feel emotional because of this matter. He just casually asked someone to help trample a small bug to death. It wasn't a big deal. Let them all go. The two of us will have a good stroll in the city. This time, Li Zongjiu and Qi Yanran came here for a casual trip. Of course, they didn't need such a big lineup. Li Zongjiu himself didn't care about these things. Jiang Bai was very clear about Li Zongjiu's temper. After all, Li Zongjiu was an existence that could get anything he wanted. With just a few words, he made the monarch of the Dao country hand over half of his territory. Therefore, peace and tranquility might be what Li Zongjiu was pursuing now. All of you disperse. As soon as Jiang Bai gave the order, his subordinates immediately scattered in all directions. The Jinchang guards also dispersed. We won't disturb Evil Lord, Jiang Bai said, and at the same time, he also bowed to Qi Yanran. Well, we'll look for you when we're done strolling, Qi Yanran said with a smile. Perhaps Li Zongjiu still looked a little fierce, but in fact, Li Zongjiu was not fierce at all. Jiang Bai quickly nodded to indicate that he had received it. Chu Yingguan also chose to be Qi Yanran's disciple. Although she didn't directly accept him as a disciple, at least she gave him a chance. Perhaps this time, when they went to the palace, Chu Yingguan might be tested again. If Chu Yingguan succeeded, he would directly become Qi Yanran's disciple. Fu Ding had jumped out before. He was the pro-disciple of Evil Lord. His strength was terrible. Even Jiang Bai had never seen such a strong willpower. Moreover, this person's goal was very clear. If Chu Yingguan could also become Qi Yinran's disciple, he would definitely soar to the sky. This would be a great opportunity. Of course, Jiang Bai had to pay attention to it. The street was suddenly cleared. Although he didn't send anyone to secretly protect Li Zongjiu and Luo Yunyang, Jiang Bai had personally informed the Jinchang guards of the arrival of these two distinguished guests. If anyone dared to offend them, they would be beheaded. "Boss, how much are you selling this?" After everyone withdrew, Li Zongjiu continued to talk to the stall owner about the price of the Luban lock in his hand. "I don't charge you. I didn't expect you to be evil lord. I don't charge anything in my stall." The stall owner was probably the most frightened out of all of them. He didn't even have time to figure out what had happened. But at least he knew one thing, and that was that the evil lord in front of him was definitely someone he couldn't afford to offend. Even the dignified General Jiang Bai had personally come to salute the evil lord. "Evil my ass. You're not from the Jianghu." Li Zongjiu waved his hand and patted the stall owner's shoulder at the same time, indicating that the latter should relax. Immediately, the stall owner's heart relaxed a little. On second thought, if he was going to die, he would have died just now. He wouldn't have waited until now. The only reason he was still alive was because of the evil lord in front of him. Since the stall owner didn't want to hand over the evil lord, then it wouldn't be wrong to call him lord. "Lord has saved my life. This Luban lock is just a small thing. I can't charge you." "All right, then I won't force you." After saying that, Li Zongjiu kept the Luban lock. When Qi Yinran saw this, she knew that Li Zongjiu's character of wanting to take advantage of others was back. He had always been like this, and she really couldn't do anything to him. This also meant that Li Zongjiu hadn't changed from the beginning to the end. This was the true character of the evil lord. "Do you know how to make things?" Li Zongjiu asked. At that time, he thought that although such a small thing seemed simple, the truth behind it wasn't that simple. "Yes, of course. To be honest, the design of Jinchang City was led by my family in the past." The old man seemed to recall the peak of his family's glory days. He couldn't help but shed tears. "That's even better. When the time comes, I'll ask you to make something. This is the deposit. I'll come to you at any time," Li Zongjiu said. At the same time, he gave a storage ring to the stall owner. In the storage ring, there were tens of thousands of supreme-grade primordial stones. Now this thing had no effect on Li Zongjiu. In addition, these supreme-grade primordial stones were very easy to take out in the big countries. However, the circulation of these stones among the people was very limited. Not to mention tens of thousands. Even if you had hundreds of them in your hands, it would be a great thing. "Oh, this can't be, this can't be." When the old man opened the ring, he was frightened. When he wanted to find Li Zongjiu to return it, he found that both of them had disappeared. If it wasn't for the storage ring in his hand, he would have thought that he was dreaming. Chapter 1378. Even Li Zongjiu didn't expect that he would be so lucky to find the descendant of the people who participated in the construction of Jinchang City. After the teleportation array was completed, he would summon this person back. After that, he would be able to properly transform Wuxia City. Li Zongjiu naturally hoped that Wuxia City could have better conditions. If it developed normally, it might take tens of thousands of years for the Holy Martial Continent to develop to the level of the Holy Martial Realm. Now the Holy Martial Realm had encountered an enemy like the Fallen Clan. In the future, the same enemy might appear in the Holy Martial Continent. In short, there was no way to avoid these things. The only thing he could do was to improve his strength and make sufficient preparations for battle before this. After that, Li Zongjiu and Qi Yinran also strolled around Jinchang City. Moreover, it was enough to buy a lot of things that were very fashionable compared to the Holy Martial Continent. These things also had very good research value. At the same time, the monarch of the Dao Kingdom also directly used the power of the whole kingdom to build a sufficient number of Tianwu ships and sent them to Li Zongjiu on time. These things were enough to arm the entire Wuxia City. They would be very good things. Why do I feel like I've come to the future world? Qi Yinran was also quite surprised. She was holding something called an ice cream cone in her hand, and eating it happily. This kind of food had never been seen in the Holy Martial Continent. Qi Yanran was also very business-minded. After all, she was also a proper genius in the Qi family. It was just that his cultivation talent was so strong that it overshadowed the brilliance of this level. Qi Yanran also spent a lot of money to buy the recipe and production method of this food. Many things that had never been seen in the Holy Martial Continent could be seen here. Of course, there were good and bad things. In fact, the quality of things depended on the person. At night, the two of them enjoyed the night scenery in front of a small river. Although these people had changed their nationality from the Great Wu to the Great Yin, it didn't change much for them. Instead, they were even happier because of the appearance of the Great Yin. Then the country became even richer and stronger. Moreover, the king of Great Yin Empire had used such a bold strategy to wipe out the fallen beastmen. His mighty and majestic aura had completely intimidated the fallen clan. As a result, the situation in the sacred martial realm had become even safer. This made the people feel even more at ease. This girl has done a good job. Qi Yanran and Li Zongjiu also discussed what Chu Yan had done. Obviously, Chu Yan also knew the root cause of this. Li Zongjiu gave the latter a chance, but he did not rush to take revenge. Instead, he focused on fighting the fallen race. Indeed, it did not disappoint Li Zongjiu. However, he still needed to carefully consider Qi Yanran's cultivation talent. If possible, he could pass down the cultivation method of Sparrow Divine Palace and spread the name of Sparrow Divine Palace in the sacred martial realm. It was also a very good choice. Not bad. Although it's impossible to say that he has everything, at least he has the potential. Li Zongjiu said. The two of them wandered around Jinchang City for almost half a month before they went to the Imperial Palace to test Chu Yan's cultivation. Qi Yanran found that Chu Yan's talent was not bad, and most importantly, his character was upright. She directly passed down the cultivation method of Sparrow Divine Palace to him. At the same time, Li Zongjiu and Qi Yanran observed for a while, and directly chose a place with strong spiritual energy in the Imperial Palace as the foundation of the teleportation formation. Chu Yan saw that he could help the two of them, so he naturally ordered Jiang Bai to send people to clean up the place without hesitation. Naturally, it would take some time to set up the teleportation formation. It needed to be studied slowly. A few days later, Chu Yan sent someone to inform them that a person called Kuanping had come to see them. Li Zongjiu and Jiang Bai were also carefully studying the layout of the teleportation formation. Huo Wushuang was also there. After all, Huo Wushuang was a true master of formations. Although Qi Yanran could provide help, it was indeed difficult for her to intervene too much in the teleportation formation. Kuanping? This guy is so modest. Let him in. Li Zongjiu said. The Kuanping was like a guardian deity of the sacred martial realm. Previously, he was called the Heavenly Sage for a reason. However, after being criticized by Li Zongjiu, he probably had no face to continue using this name. No matter what, this old guy belonged to the top of the sacred martial realm. Unexpectedly, he was so modest and even waited at the door to be notified. Li Zongjiu was a little surprised. However, it was precisely because of the latter's humble attitude that Li Zongjiu was willing to meet him. Otherwise, Li Zongjiu wouldn't care who he was. Since the other party came with such sincerity, Li Zongjiu might as well see what he wanted. Li Zongjiu and Qi Yanran were in front of a small wooden house. They brewed a pot of good tea under a tree in front of the courtyard and waited for the other party to come. Kuanping Heavenly Sage had changed into more ordinary clothes. He looked like a very ordinary old man. Haha, Lord Evil Lord, I'm here to disturb you again this time. Kuanping Heavenly Sage smiled warmly when he saw Li Zongjiu. If one didn't know, they would think that the two of them were sworn brothers. Have a seat. Kuanping Heavenly Sage was the only one who could really talk to Li Zongjiu. Even the other absolute saints couldn't talk to Li Zongjiu. The person sitting in front of him was the dignified evil lord Li Zongjiu. This little girl who came out of nowhere dared to snatch something from evil lord Li Zongjiu's hand. However, Li Zhongjiu didn't seem to be angry. The unique 9 meridian scroll? Huo Wushuang blurted out when she saw the scroll in his hand. When he heard Huo Wushuang say the name of the scroll, Kuanping couldn't sit still. Kuanping, who had been sitting, couldn't stay calm anymore. He directly jumped up from his seat. You, how did you know? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.